Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Big Brother 21 post-season coverage. I'm here with Holly from the season, our runner-up for Big Brother 21. How you doing, Holly?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yes, you had talked to Nicole about the podcast she did, and
Yep.
I guess she spoke highly enough about it that you were like, "Hey, I want to do this too."
Yep, exactly. I take her advice.
Yeah, that was very flattering.
Yeah, she had fun, and yeah, so I want to
Yes.
see what you had in store for me too.
All right. Well, we're gonna get into it. We're gonna go through your game. I know that you've mentioned that you felt like your game was not shown as much as you wanted it to be
Oh yeah,
on the show.
not even a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into it here. Let's talk about your game. You have a somewhat unique experience with the show in that you were cast and then found out that you were going to be on the show with somebody that you knew.
Yep.
Can you tell me like when it was that you learned that?
I mean, I didn't really know that Kat was going to be on the show until, like, you don't even know if you're going to be on the show until you walk in the door. I walked in the door and saw Kat and was like, oh crap, because we know each other, but not well. Like,
You know
I
each
posted,
other.
what's that?
You know each other.
We know each other. Y'all know each other. But not well.
Was that the dog Jackson in the background?
Yeah. Jax, come here. The two Jacksons are best of friends, and it's so cute. Come here. Come here and say hi to the people. This is the dog Jackson. Obviously, America is very familiar with the human Jackson, but this is the OG, the original Jackson. Hey, buddy. So anyway, to stop getting distracted, yeah, it surprised the heck out of me when I walked in and saw that Kat was there, because we don't know each other well. So I was really scared that could be a huge hindrance to my game, because I didn't know if I should trust her. I didn't know if she would just want to get me out originally, right off the bat, to not have to worry about it, because I didn't know if I could trust her, but also I figured she didn't know if she could trust me. And so it was just this total wrench thrown in my game that I wasn't expecting, and that, you know, other people didn't have to deal with. And yes, it ended up being beneficial in some ways, but also hurtful in ways also, because it was awesome having somebody that I decided I could actually rely on and I could actually fully trust and talk to. But she spilled the beans on us knowing each other on like day 2 or day 3. So that could have come back to bite me, almost came back to bite me, in the whole day 44 blow up. So
Yeah.
anyway, it was an interesting little road there, having a surprise appearance by somebody I knew.
Yeah. Had you been in contact at all before entering the house?
I mean, we've been friends on Instagram for years, like, I don't even, since Instagram started. So yeah, we've been like IG friends.
But like, you knew that you were both trying out for the show, right?
I saw her at finals, but I was way too scared to say a word. Like, I was way too nervous to say anything, you know? I was like,
Right.
I don't want to ruin my chances. I was way too nervous. Like, I saw her and was too scared to talk to her. I was even so paranoid before going on the show. I was like in Big Brother paranoia mode really early. I saw Jess and Cody at a wedding, at one of my friends' weddings, like a week before I went on the show or something. And I was too scared to talk to them. I like stayed really far away because I was too scared, just because I was like paranoid that I would say something or get nervous and be weird and somehow it would be found out that, anyway, that I was
Well,
going on the show.
there was
I was
another
trying
person.
really hard to be very tight-lipped.
Yeah,
I didn't even tell my dad I was going on the show because he gossips.
Well, there was another person, Jenna, right, that was supposed to be on that Kat knew.
That's what I've heard. So I don't know, and I still don't even know if Kat and I were supposed to know each other, if that was supposed to be a twist, or if that was just an oopsie. Like, I genuinely don't know.
It seems to me like a bit of an oopsie, to be honest. Especially the fact that Jenna was supposed to be on, and it's not like you were her alternate. It was Christie that was the alternate. So if Jenna had been on, there would have been two people that knew Kat.
Exactly, and that would have been really, really weird. Yeah, I think it might have been an oopsie.
Yeah,
which is funny because like we work, even now, like we were both in pageants. We both work for competing energy drink companies. Like, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, it almost feels like there's it's somebody's job to make sure there are no like pre-existing relationships, and that person just kind of had a bad day or something. I don't know. 'Cause there were a lot of them.
And I mean, maybe we were supposed to know each other. I still don't know, but it was weird watching it back. I've watched the whole season already. And it's weird because they really didn't highlight Kat and I knowing each other. And like the whole dynamic, because it was weird of like that, oh my gosh, can I trust her? Can I trust her? This is so weird. This is so scary. But then that transforming into no, okay, I trust her fully. She's going to be my ride or die. She's going to be my final two. We're going to the end together. And then kind of leveraging her relationship and having her almost like act as like a mole in the house for me. But it was really, that wasn't really shown like that.
It kind of felt to me like, she was on the block the first week, very nearly went home. Like, it kind of felt to me like they were like, maybe we don't have to show that we messed up a little bit if she goes home early. Right.
Because if she had gone home, it wouldn't have mattered. But that's when it was during those, because technically it's 2 weeks. Because the first week of Christie's HOH was before live feed. So Christie was HOH for 2 weeks. And so it was in those 2 weeks that I was trying to navigate, do I trust this girl? And if I decide that I do, can she be beneficial to my game? And how am I going to leverage that? And so it was during those 2 weeks that I decided, yes, I want to keep her in the house 1000%. And so, oh my gosh, that made my job so difficult right out the gate because she was an emotional wreck. She wanted to self-evict. She was crying all the time. She was pissing people off, rubbing people the wrong way because of just, her emotional self. And I adore Kat. She's a unique specimen. But I had to like wrangle her in, and I had to be the tough love friend and put her in check a lot and try to, keep her a little controlled so that she didn't go home.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting because obviously there was another pair that knew each other going into the game, Tommy and Christie, and they seemed to take a bit of a different approach than you and Kat in the sense that they pretty much teamed up right away. They were both in the same alliance. I think they weren't trying to be obvious about the fact that they were close at first, but eventually it became very obvious. Very quickly it became very obvious. Whereas you and Kat were not really in the same alliance to start the game, and never really were in like an official sort of grouping until sort of very much near the end of her game.
Yeah, and I wanted it to be like that because I wanted somebody on the other side of the house. I never wanted to be in the dark in this game because the whole point is to know what's going on. And so I wanted her to join an alliance on the other side of the house, and which she eventually did. It was kind of a rough start of, alliances really getting geared up, aside from obviously the big one with Grateful. But I was glad that she was not in Grateful. So we could kind of talk back and forth. And because I felt, it obviously didn't work out, but I felt like I would have better control of keeping her safe as well. And so I tried to make her stay in good graces with, Grateful, but really 6 shooters because Grateful disintegrated pretty quickly. So I tried to keep her in good graces, but yeah, obviously didn't work because she was, as we know, she's a little loose-lipped and told a few too many secrets that blew up. So, but it was really helpful because like I knew about Cliff's Angels. I knew where their motivations were. I knew where their targets were. And I don't think people know that. I mean, I hope live feeders know that. I really felt like I was in a very good position because I really knew everything that was happening throughout the house. Because not only did I have Kat, but I also just had established really good, solid relationships with like everyone in the house. So I felt pretty in the loop as much as you can in that game.
Yeah. So talking about the first week, or the first really 2 weeks of the game, tell me about the first, the twist. Camp director Jackson volunteers. He ends up becoming the camp director. Were you on Team Jackson immediately, or were you on like the Jess sort of train first and then flipped over?
Well, I was originally on the Jess team. I flipped over to Team Jackson as I felt good about either of them right off the bat. I also felt good about Cliff, but I just knew nobody was going the Cliff route. David was the only other one that volunteered, and he came in hot right out the gate and seemed like he wanted to stir the pot, and he kept asking all the girls if they were single, and I was like, I don't know what you're here for. Like, I don't think I'm gonna vote for you because I don't know what game you're playing. And so I knew I didn't want David. No offense, David, I love you. And then nobody cared about Cliff. Jess, I was gung-ho Jess, but then when at that point, I just wanted to go with whoever because I didn't want to stick out at all in the beginning. And so it originally was Jess. When it started moving to, okay, maybe people are thinking Jackson, I wanted to be in his good graces and figured I probably would be. I mean, we were typecast as like the male and female version of each other. So I was like, I feel like he and I will probably get along in this game, but I don't know. So I want to make sure I'm in good graces. So I pulled him aside and I was like, hey, this is a big responsibility and there will be repercussions that come with it. There will be a backlash. Do you want to handle that? Like, are you okay taking that on? Because if you are, then I will vote for you, but I don't want to put you in a tough position. So he was like, yep, I'll take on the responsibility. And I was like, okay, cool. I just wanted to like kind of let him know I had his back preemptively. And so, yeah, I just went with the herd as you do in the beginning.
Was there any discussion between you and him about who he would banish once that became?
No, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't me.
Yeah. All right. So
I knew he wouldn't if I, kind of was like, I got you back. I want to make sure you're, ready for this. I figured he wouldn't banish me. And that's all I cared about at that point. I was like, banish whoever's good for your game.
Yeah. Did you have any connection to any of the people that were banished at that point?
I mean, I was bummed that Cliff was banished. Immediately when I started seeing who the squirrel was taking, I understood. I was like, okay, well, it's everybody that volunteered, so that makes sense. And then Kemi, who I don't think anybody really connected with right off the bat, so I like understood that. But I got where he was going, but I was a little bummed that Cliff was banished. I was bummed that they all were banished because that sucks. But immediately I thought that Cliff was somebody that I could work with. He looks like somebody from my hometown. He looks like somebody that would be friends with my dad. And I saw him as somebody that I could potentially work with. So I was a little bummed that he got kidnapped by the creepy squirrel.
Yeah.
But I was very happy that he came back.
Well, so David is the one that goes home. Then you have the HOH competition. Christie is the one that wins. Did you have any feelings about that at the time?
So I went into that comp thinking I wanted to place third because in life, people generally underestimate me. And I didn't I wanted to play a really low key game, but I didn't want to be underestimated to the point of not getting scooped up by an alliance. And I didn't want to be a floater. I didn't want to play the floater game because I didn't think it would be best strategy for me personally. So I wanted to get scooped up by an alliance. So I wanted to prove my worth enough, but not win and have a target on my back right out the gate. So I aimed to place third. So I hung on until the second sis dropped. I let go. And I felt, honestly, Christie sketched me out from the beginning, but I knew that I was on good terms with her. So I was fine with her winning. But she sketched me out from the beginning because she was so all over the place. When we were deciding on camp director, she had such a strong opinion about everything, but her opinion changed by the millisecond. And I was like, I can't keep up with this girl. She's all over the place. She's emotional. It's actually funny because then when Nick was like talking about alliances and he was like, okay, he's listing off the people. He's like, you, Jack, Jackson, Christie. And I was like, really? Because she seems very emotional and I don't know if I want to work with that. And he was like, no, she's cool. Trust me. And I was like, okay. Which is funny. But then I knew she and I were fine. So I was totally good with her winning. And she and I actually became friends right off the bat. She, myself, and Sis. And so Sis and I slept in the HOH room with her for the first 2 weeks of the show. We all slept in the bed together because we got really close right away.
Yes. And you also created like a little alliance, right?
Yeah, obviously there was Grateful, but within that first HOH, we formed a Final Four, which never made air. I mean, obviously, I'm sure live feeders saw, but with Christie, Sis, Tommy, and myself.
Mm-hmm. And so also Grateful is going to come together. The sort of the core of that was initially Jackson, Jack, and Bella, right? And then it sort of expanded
they had
from
like
there.
Their final three, and then they, picked up more of us kids.
Yeah, and Bella quickly crawled out of that core.
Oh man, that was ridiculous. That girl's a funny player. It's like, what are you doing? Watching it back, it's so funny. I'm like, Bella, what are you doing? What is happening?
Well, very quickly, your relationship with Bella, sort of, maybe not your relationship, but how you saw Bella sort of went downhill because, well, maybe not because, but you were having conversations with Kat about Bella and, what she was doing and the kinds of things that she was saying that maybe, she's in really tight with Jack and Jackson, and that she's exposing that Jack and Jackson have a final two together. And Kat was worried about how close Bella was with Jackson. She had conversations with him about that because they were talking about like moving in together at one point.
We all were.
Yeah.
I was too. Like we literally all. I mean, and I was not serious about that. I was just going along with it. We were saying that me, Bella, Sis, and Jackson would all move in together after the show, get a place in LA.
Ah.
Like, yeah, we all were.
Yes. Well,
so funny.
I don't think Kat loved that. And I, that seemed to be that she was trying to place a target on Bella at that point.
That Kat was? Sorry,
yeah.
I need to turn this up a tad. My AC just went on and it's loud. That Kat was trying to put a target on Bella?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But also, Bella was like running her mouth so much. I was like, girl, because she and I were in the same alliance, so I didn't want her to blow up her game or anyone else's game because it would affect my game. So anyway,
yeah,
it's funny that then like Kat and I were talking about people running their mouths because I'm like, Kat, you do the same thing. You spill the beans on everything.
So you also got close to Jackson fairly quickly, it seemed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When do you think that relationship really started to kick off?
We were friends right away. Like within the first couple days, we just got along really well. I never saw him as anything more than a friend in the beginning. I definitely was keeping my distance. I didn't really see him as that. I also didn't go in the show with the intent of having a relationship at all. I didn't want to showmance unless it would be beneficial to my game and I could leverage it in some way. So actually, Jackson and I, like, first week or two, I don't know at what point this was, but we started talking about having a faux-mance, and we were very seriously contemplating staging a showmance because we could then manipulate it different ways, which we ended up kind of doing some of it, like going off on our own, being like exiled from the group, being loners, because if we ever had a target on our back, that would be a strategy to get it off. We also talked about, because if we were in a faux-mance, we could stage a breakup. And anyway, so it's funny that we talked about that, but then real feelings started to develop. And, you know, in my head, showmance is not a real thing. I really didn't understand the weight of it and how real feelings do become. And so it wasn't until like day 18, I remember thinking, I was like seeing him in a different way, and I was like, oh no, now I'm starting to think that Jackson's cute. But at that point we were just friends, and I was like, you know, on his team, and anyway, so day 18 I started to think he was cute, and he was like, he'd been kind of trying for a little while. He was starting to get a little flirtatious, and so
yeah,
we had a chat before anything ever happened romantically. We had a chat, and we were like, okay, we are very good friends, and nothing is going to change that inside of this house and outside beyond this. So whatever happens, it's not going to affect our friendship. We were very transparent with each other. We always had very, very open communication. We were always very mature about things. We knew that our friendship would come first. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it seemed pretty obvious, I think, to me at least, that really by the time the feeds even came on, that even though he was theoretically in a relationship with Kat, he seemed closer to you and confided more in you. And you, I don't know how intentional it was, but I think you were kind of the sort of like the instigating force that led to a lot of Christie's paranoia with Jack, because you talked to Jackson about Jack, and he was upset at Jack at the time because Jack had talked to Christie about the fact that he was with Kat, and you kind of fueled those flames against Jack.
Yeah, well, and there were a lot of reasons for that. First of all, Jack and Christie were so insanely close, and it worried me because I saw Jack getting, like, it was like he was wearing like rose-colored glasses with anything Christie did, and I wanted him to be privy to her gameplay a little bit, and just because I knew that Jack and Jackson had a final two. But he wasn't really acting like it. Jack wasn't. Because his main focus in everything he did was for Christie. So I didn't want his like distorted gameplay to hurt our alliance. I mean, if it hurt him, then fine. I mean, one of us in the alliance would have to go eventually. But in the beginning, I wanted everybody's games to be safe, because my whole point of joining a powerful alliance was to sink to the bottom of it, float to the bottom of it, and let everybody else around me be targets. But of course, I wanted that to last, you know, as long as possible. So I didn't want Jack to screw up his game. But when Christie started being Christie, I wanted him to kind of be aware of it, and which didn't work at all.
Well, after you talked,
still blinded. He was blinded by everything.
Yeah, like because you talked to Jackson about being seen as too close to Jack and you know, being seen as too close to Kat. And he went to Christie and talked about, like, I don't want to be seen as a pair with anybody, like maybe you are with Jack. And she's like, I'm not in a pair with Jack. Like, I don't want to be seen as in a pair with anybody either. And that's really what's like the seed of what started a lot of the, like, I'm not going to do what Jack tells me to do this week. I'm not going to be backdooring Christie or Kemi. And everything that followed there. So it was really it really rolled downhill and escalated very quickly there.
Yeah, which really, like, I just wanted Jack to, like, see things clearly and not be under her thumb. But yeah, it got a little wonky.
Jess is also going to sort of hold a seminar about women and women empowerment with some of the women. This is a little bit after the Black Widows have formed, and they actually agreed not to include you and Kat because they were worried that you would also go to Christie. But Jess kind of went ahead with the women's empowerment talk anyway, and you had a conversation with Kat afterward, kind of like, this is no good. We're not gonna get ourselves dragged into this.
Now I don't remember. I'm trying to remember that conversation. It was a long summer, so
yeah.
So feel free to, like, give me refreshers, especially because now, like, watching back, I've seen obviously the episodes, but I haven't, like, watched any of the live feeds. So people will be like, remember that time you said that? I'm like, I don't know.
It happens.
Okay. I'm like, oh man, there was so much, when there's just, like, no distractions, when you're sitting in a house for 99 days and every day is the same. You hardly ever get to go outside. You're sitting in the same rooms with the same people, staring at the same bright lights, doing the same thing every day. I tend to forget details because it's so monotonous. So, okay. So Kat and I were talking about.
Yeah, well, basically, you were like, we're not for this. Like, this is, you know, sure, women will protect each other in the game. That's great. But we don't trust these women in particular. We have an alliance.
Yeah, exactly.
Or you had an alliance.
We'd already established, I mean, I had, obviously, that alliance that I was in, but also felt really good about Kat and Jackson. Those were the only two people that I fully trusted throughout the entire game. And in Big Brother, you have to look at players, their strengths, their weaknesses, your game, how the players align with your game or against your game, and you have to decide how you can navigate forward with the specific players. You can't look at a factor like gender to tell you whether it's going to be better or worse for your game. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think Kat and I just thought it was not naive, but it was like, no, there are so many other factors. You really have to just look at the player as a whole, and not just a, you know, physical appearance. And so we were like, nope, we have something good, and we'll roll with that.
Yes, this is also this week is the start of something that was kind of a recurring theme throughout the season, which is that you, as you got closer to Jackson, would essentially like coach him on like, hey, you need to be nicer to people. You need to
reel it in.
Yeah.
Because a lot of, and I swear I did this with a lot of people throughout the season. If they were an ally of mine, it was like keeping them in check was as important as keeping myself in check, which is hard. It's just hard to do in that house because emotions are running rampant. And so I wanted to keep my allies safe, and Jackson was my biggest ally. So it was important that he didn't ruffle feathers and that he didn't get himself evicted, because if he had, then I knew I didn't have Jack. Jack had Christie as his number one, and then he had Tommy, and then he had Sis. So it's like, I don't want to be at the bottom of that totem pole. Jackson needs to stay in line. He needs to be the lesser of the threats between him and Jack. And he can't rub people the wrong way, because he's so, like, he doesn't always realize, because he gets so worked up when he talks, and he's very elaborate, and it can oftentimes, come off abrasive. And so I just really wanted to reel him in, keep him safe.
So Ovi is the one that ends up going on the block. You were happy about that. You said that was smart.
I thought it was smart because Ovi was a competitor. I thought he was a threat for sure. He's a smart kid, but he also had, he was there to play. I saw that from the get-go. I mean, he was right out the gate. He approached me in the beginning, and asked me to start an alliance with him, start gathering people. And he was taking the bull by the horns, and I didn't agree to it. Everyone else just agreed to whatever alliance was put in front of them, which is fine. I get that that's gameplay. People say, okay, there's an alliance, I must take it. I did not think that. I didn't want to be disingenuous. Because I didn't want it to come back and bite me. I didn't want to agree to work with Ovi knowing damn well that I was already in an alliance that didn't include him, because then if he finds out and that pisses him off, who's he mad at? This girl. And that just wasn't my gameplay. I didn't want to lie to him. I didn't want to lie to people. But anyway, point being, I did not agree to join an alliance with him, but he was he had balls. I was trying to think of a more tactful word to say.
Gusto.
He had grit. He had gusto. And so I was afraid of him since the very beginning. And not only did he have the gusto and the smarts, I knew he was very intelligent, but he was also such a sweetheart. And I hate that that's a reason, that's you have to think about that. But it's okay, well, shoot, if he doesn't go between him or Kemi at that point, because obviously I did not want Kat to go. And it was well, between him and Kemi, just looking at it, it's well, if we do keep him, are we going to get another chance to get him out? One of those kind of things. And yeah, I was more afraid of him at that point.
Mm-hmm. So Ovi is the one that goes up. He ends up being evicted that week.
Yeah.
And the next week, Jack is going to win the HOH after Camp Comeback is announced, and Ovi doesn't actually leave. And so it's around this time you started talking about that you were concerned that you were close to Jackson, but you were concerned that he wasn't necessarily the meat shield that you wanted him to be, and that you might be targeted over him in the case that somebody went to target the two of you, and that would be unfortunate.
Yeah, because the whole point was to have some a bigger target next to me, because if the target is next to me, it's not on me. And with anyone, I wanted to, I was careful of who I aligned myself with, even with Sis. And this was a little after this stage in the game, but Sis and I in the beginning were very, very close. And, we called each other the BB besties and everything. But it started to really worry me that if people were going to go after somebody in our alliance and they were too afraid to go after Jack and Jackson, that they would go after Sis and I. And between Sis and I, who do you think they'd want to get rid of first? So I made a conscious effort to actually distance myself from her. I had to pull away from her because it's okay, I'm already close with Jackson. If people are going to target us, they can easily put the two of us up. And that's just going to happen. I'm relying on the fact that he's a bigger target, but I need to lessen the duos that I'm in. That's why with Kat, I tried so hard to push her away and not look like we were close. I tried to talk shit, and I kind of tried to be a little I act like I didn't like her, even though I love her. She can be very frustrating to live with, but I really tried to make it seem like she and I were not friends. Even with Jackson, I didn't want him to know how close Kat and I were. But anyway, so yeah, I really like obviously Jackson was gonna always be my duo, and I wanted the target to remain on him, and it started to worry me that he, you know, wasn't really like proving to be as big of a threat. But
the relationship between Jackson and Kat is starting to really, I mean, it had been deteriorating. Now it's about to end this week, and there's been a lot of tension between you and Kat with this situation. Kat's expressed a lot of annoyance with you and your relationship with Jackson, and then I don't remember, was the breakup scene in the episode? I think it was, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Like a little bit.
Which is yeah, I'm pretty sure it was aired. Which is so, yeah, it was, because because like I knew he was going to do it. And so I was curious how it was going to be edited. But honestly, there wasn't really, with Kat and I, there really wasn't tension. We were weirdly like transparent the whole time. Like anything that happened, and it's funny saying like breakup, because like it was a very, I don't know. It's not like, I don't know. It was very surface level, very, very short. And I was really good friends with both of them in the beginning. So it's like they would tell me about each other. Like they would just dish the dirt on each other to me. And so it was funny because like I knew how they felt about each other, and it was just very like, like whatever. And so it's funny to say breakup. But Kat and I were also very transparent. I mean, Jackson and I were too. Very open communication, as open as you can have in the Big Brother house. But Kat and I, when I started flirting with Jackson, I even went to her and I was like, does this make you feel uncomfortable? And she said, no, not at all. I ship it. She was like, go for it. I'm not interested. She's like, he's not somebody that I would date. Go for it if you want to go for it. And then when Jackson and I first kissed, Kat was the first person I told. And then granted, she did, even though she was like, I'm happy for you, go for it, I give you my blessing, she did get a little weird after I actually told her that we had kissed. And then she got a little frustrated, and then she would go and talk poorly about him in the DR, and then tell me that she talked poorly about him in the DR. And I was like, don't tell me that. Like, you can't. She gets worked up and acts on emotion. And so she would tell me that she'd been talking shit about him. And I was like, Kat, you really can't do that. This is, national TV. But anyway.
Yeah. But there was definitely, I think, tension on her part at the very least. And it had been building since the previous week. I think she sort of saw that perhaps the reason Jackson was not giving her the same level of attention was because he was instead kind of giving it to you. And then when he broke it off, she kind of brought you up, like, is this the reason? He said no, but she thought it was.
Yeah, there were definitely multiple reasons, and I can't speak for him because that was his decision and everything, but there were I think multiple reasons. And it's funny because it was like, so again, like so short-lived. And in her, like, her depiction of the relationship or whatever, to me was like, I don't care about this guy at all. It's just very, like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, all right. But of course it's like, again, in a normal scenario, it would be so much different. But when you're all locked in a, summer camp cabin essentially together, it's just things happen differently. Relationships are magnified, emotions are magnified, and so it's so funny because we're all such good friends now. So it's funny, like, thinking back on this. And Kat and I really were, though. Like, we really did, as awkward as it may have seemed, we were so upfront with one another, and so, like, I don't know, laid back about everything. We're adults. And yeah.
Yeah, well, I
And we've
remember
moved on.
I think it's maybe next week that you yeah, I think it's next week that you have a conversation with Kat, or it might be the week after, where you finally like really like air everything out, come back together. Kat's like, yeah, I talk shit about you in the DR sometimes.
Yeah.
And but it's at that point that things really start to move, I think, smoothly in your relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there were like, I also, like I said from the beginning, I was always kind of her like brutally honest friend. And so I had a conversation with her also where I kind of was like trying to put her in check. Like I said, with Jackson, I was always like trying to keep him in check, manage him. I did the same thing with Kat. I did the same thing with Sis, even, because Sis would get riled up and threaten to pop off on people. She was always saying like, I'm going to pop off on them. And I was like, don't do that. But with Kat, I like sat her down and told her like she was sucking my energy. And it was actually a really funny clip. And we continue to laugh about this because I was giving so much of my energy to try to keep her balanced and keep her safe. And so I said to her one day, I was like, Kat, like you're draining. I'm giving so much to you. Like, I feel depleted. And she goes, oh, you're depleted? Have you taken your daily vitamin? So it ended up a clip, and we think that's hilarious. But anyway, we were always like, yeah, I was always brutally honest with her. And afterwards, we kind of like hashed shit and got feelings out. And then that transparency led to trust. Talking about our relationship, talking about, you know, how Jackson came into play. And then she and I fully had each other's backs from there. And it was great. It was, we almost needed that to fully trust each other.
Yes. So Kemi and Jess were on the block this week from Jack. Sam wins the veto. He keeps things the same.
Yeah.
Now, Nicole and Kemi wanted to make a concerted effort to get closer with you and Jackson, hoping that they could maybe turn you against Nick and Bella, because there was already some tension there. So this is around the time you start to get a little bit closer to Nicole. She's talking to you, and Kemi is talking to Jackson at this time. And that's really going to blossom into the early part of next week. There's also an attempted vote flip here, started by Sam, that actually you and Sis were the first people to say, no, this is not happening.
Yeah. Because at that point, again, it's so early on in the game. And ruffling feathers is not something you want to do, especially with my whole MO, my whole strategy. Okay. So yeah, just at that point, especially with, if I were to go against my alliance, it would just be stupid. And it was a bummer because it's like, I really liked Kemi and I really liked Nicole, and it was hard seeing something in people, but knowing that you couldn't really work with them at that stage in the game because, you know, you have to be, it's like you literally have to be a sheep. And I was trying to like float within Grateful or Six Shooters, and so I couldn't really, I couldn't ruffle anything.
Mm-hmm. So Kemi is the one that goes home. Jackson is gonna throw a rogue vote here in this one. He tells you about it pretty quickly. He didn't tell you beforehand though, right? Or no, he did.
No, he wanted me to do a rogue vote with him.
Yeah.
Because he wanted to pin it on Nick and Bella. And so if I knew that he were going to do it regardless, then I would have voted with him. Mm-hmm. I thought I had talked him out of doing it entirely. Because I didn't want it to get out that it was him. I didn't want it to get pinned on him. I didn't want it to get pinned on anybody, because at that point I was like, we already know that the house is starting to move towards being against Nick and Bella. I didn't think that it was really that necessary personally. He was afraid that Sis and I would end up on the block. And so he really wanted to pin it on somebody else and try to try to get the house to, to have an enemy elsewhere. But yeah, he tried to get me to vote with him. I talked him out of it, said it wasn't a good idea. And then to my knowledge, he wasn't going to do it at all. And then I heard the votes come back and I was like, damn it. He went and did it anyway. So if I'd known that it was a non-negotiable for him, that he just had to throw a rogue vote, I would have done it with him so that it would have been pinned on Nick and Bella rather than being pinned on Nicole.
Mm-hmm.
That was pointless, I thought.
This is also around the time that you and Jackson sort of officially start to get together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So that's later going to be an issue. It's around this time also that Cliff and Nicole have sort of figured out Grateful. So Bella has exposed Grateful to Sam.
Yeah, it wasn't hard to figure out.
Right, and then Jack sort of said Grateful in front of Sam.
Dumbest. Literally, I rewound and watched that so many times. I was like, Jack, wow, mental comp beast.
Yeah.
God, we were oh my gosh. There are so many reasons that, Grateful. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So Nicole's feeling very upset. Like, what am I going to do about this? She ends up going to you and has a conversation with you about mostly about Nick, because at this time she feels like she's in between you and Nick. She has a relationship with him. She has a relationship with you. She knows there's a lot of tension there, and she's not sure which side to kind of pick. And she's trying to accelerate sort of the tension between the two of you. And so she goes to you talking about Nick.
Exactly. And yeah, she saw an opportunity. She saw a crack and wanted to cause division. And at that point, I mean, it was already starting. It was already forming. I did not like Nick. I did not respect Nick and Bella's gameplay, and I didn't like being associated with them anymore. But I didn't know, how to navigate away from that. I didn't want to be the one making moves, but at the same time, when I saw Nicole coming to me, expressing these frustrations, trying to get in good graces with me, I was skeptical, but at the same time, I saw it as a good opportunity to bring another number to our side. And anyone that was against Nick and Bella, I was happy about. That was fantastic because I knew I wanted them out of the picture, and not only out of our alliance, but I wanted them out of the house because I didn't want them to retaliate, especially because Nick and I, on a personal level, we butted heads. And so I was afraid that if we got them out of Grateful and they decided to retaliate against the rest of us, who would they go after? Probably me, because I didn't think Nick had it in him to target the big threats. I didn't think that he would go after Jack or Jackson. I didn't think he was brave enough. And he and I, we are very different. I love him now, but in the beginning, I sure as shit didn't. So.
Well, and that was the thing, is that he was trying to maybe not necessarily fully target you yet, but he was trying to get you on the block with Kat.
For sure.
And definitely, putting those names in Nicole's mouth.
Yep.
And that's part of what Nicole was doing, going to you and telling you about how Nick had done that. And so Nicole eventually is going to open up to Nick and Bella about the fact that, hey, your entire alliance is against you. They were going to gun for you if you hadn't won this HOH. But Nick, of course, does not listen to her. Goes ahead with his plan, nominates Cliff and Jess.
Golden.
Yeah. And so then afterwards, Tommy is talking to Bella about what's going on. Bella says what Nicole told her, and this is what eventually culminates in the big undeniable moment up in the HOH room.
Yeah. Everybody started to, and I like kind of had a feeling that this was all going on. Oh, and that stupid conversation, that whole HOH fight and like blow up was so dumb. I was just sitting there like, yeah, duh. She saw an opportunity, got in there, and they're like, she's playing both sides. And I was like, yeah, she is. And, you know, power to her, because she wanted to attach, you know, her little floaty raft to a big ship and was trying to figure out what ship to attach it to. She saw division. She wanted to create division so that the ship started sailing in different directions and she could just hitch on to either one. So I was like, all the power to her. But oh man, people were getting so fired up, which was so silly, because it's like, you guys, we're all doing this. Everything's honest. It's not like this is like a big revelation and everybody's acting skills were, you know, being tested. They're like, I can't believe, whatever. It was all very stupid. And I just kind of sat there and didn't say much and just acted surprised.
Yeah. Well, you talked about like feeling played by Nicole.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
yeah, she was playing the game.
Yes.
I mean, we had to, because at that point it's like, you know, everybody's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I got caught.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, because it essentially, it went from sort of like she's playing both sides. So like she's making this stuff up and like trying to pretend these things don't exist, when in reality, all she's doing is exposing the truth to both sides.
Yeah. It was all true.
Yeah.
It was all true. And everybody was just trying to cover their own ass, because you have to. I will admit I was a little bummed, actually, because I was kind of excited, like, at the potential of maybe working with her. And we did have like really good conversations. And she and we had like heart to hearts. We had I thought, you know, a really good conversation in the backyard room on the bed. We talked about how Nick and Belle were treating her. Mm-hmm. And she opened up to me about how she had felt bullied by them, even though like she hadn't been bullied as a kid or anything, but she'd kind of experienced it more recently as an adult, and she didn't stand for that. She didn't tolerate bullying. And I got bullied a ton growing up, and a lot, in a lot of different ways. And as a kid, and then through junior high and high school as well. And so I definitely don't tolerate it. And so we talked about how Nick and Belle were treating her. And I thought, you know, we had a really good heart-to-heart conversation, and just on a personal level. And I started to like really see her and respect her, and or not like see her, but like see more, you know, of just how she internally operates. And I was like, you know, maybe we can work together. Maybe there's something here, because we started getting closer. And so I was a little bummed, you know, that nothing that we talked about was kept in confidence, but you know, but it was a good game move. So I was like, power to her for doing that. Mm-hmm. You know, I was just bummed I couldn't bring her over to my side.
Yes. Well, so, I mean, you know, she's going to be sort of defending herself for a while afterward,
for sure.
with Tommy as the, I don't remember what they called him. Moderator.
Oh yeah.
Supervisor.
Because, oh my gosh, that was such a stupid, I don't remember how that got started, that it was like, nobody's allowed to have a private conversation unless there's somebody there moderating, which I get in a sense, because people were like so afraid of.
Watch out, she's going to get in your ear. She's Vanessa Rousseau.
Yeah. So Tommy and I both sat in, actually, in the RV room when Bella and Nicole were talking, because Tommy and I are really similar in the game, and just personality is just like a little more level-headed and absorb information, and rather than spew information, and also like we were a little more neutral and unbiased. And like, obviously I was in an alliance, but I had plenty of feelings about them. And so it was a little easier to, I think, see both sides. So Tommy and I both sat in on a conversation in the RV where Bella just like laid into Nicole.
Yeah. So the plan eventually shifts back as sort of Tommy and Christie especially sort of lead the charge about like, I'm pretty sure Nicole's telling the truth here. Maybe we should keep her. And there's also a lot of distrust toward Kat at this point because she's getting into a big blow up with Jackson. Which causes more sort of tension between you and her, which gets smoothed over pretty quickly. And at this point, they are talking. The 6 shooters are talking about kind of like ditching Kat. Like let's just get rid of this whole situation. And you are gonna sort of stick up for her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I didn't want them to disassociate with her and then have her end up going home because of lack of targets. At that point, it was like, well, if we ditch her and if 6 shooters didn't feel like she had value to them, I was afraid that not only would they disassociate, but she would end up in danger. So I tried to keep her as like, just as like a number, as like an honorary 7th, which in hindsight was a bad play because then she did end up being good with us. And it was actually during Have Not Week also when she was in the Have Not room with Christie and Tommy and Jackson that she became really, really close with Christie and Tommy. And that's actually what kind of screwed her because I'd been working so hard to having her be in good graces with 6 shooters. And then she developed more of a personal relationship with Christie and Tommy, but she was ultimately working with Jess, Nicole, and Cliff. So that's where Jack started to pick up on a lot of that. And before he went out the door, he told Tommy like Kat has to go. And so that ended up, you know, a lot of things ended up shooting her in the foot.
Yeah. Okay. Kat also, you know, during Jess's HOH week had a lot to say to Tommy and Christie, which, you know, didn't help her case the next week.
Yeah. She just, the art of secrecy. She has not mastered it at all.
No.
I tried to teach her, but she was not a very good student. I'm pretty sure she's not actually in Mensa.
Well, so to defend Kat in week 3, you did mention that you had mutual friends, and that you know if she betrayed, like she couldn't betray you because you had mutual friends. And at the time, I was like, oh my god, like you're spilling the beans here. What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
But it didn't go anywhere. This was not even the thing that people pointed to. It was the stagecoach thing that people pointed to.
Yeah. Everybody was talking about like connections that they had. And Kat kept spilling the beans about like, cause she told people that I worked for Rockstar, the energy drink company. Cause she works for Monster. I worked for Rockstar. Nobody knew that. I made the executive decision to not talk about that because, well, duh. But she started telling people that I worked for Rockstar. And I was like, Kat, you can't say that. So people already knew that I worked for Rockstar, and our mutual friend that we have is somebody that I work with at Rockstar. And so she'd like said something about her, and I was like, I guess let's just go with this, because if we're so open and honest about having mutual friends and like how crazy it is, then why would people think that we know each other? You know what I mean? It was like a hopeful reverse psychology thing.
You also kind of let Kat know that there was a big alliance, an alliance of 8. I don't think you told her the name, but you said like there is a big alliance, but like don't worry about it. You're not on the outside of it because it's not even a real thing at this point. And that did kind of come back to bite you a little bit because, as you mentioned, Kat's not the best at keeping secrets. And very quickly, Tommy caught on to the fact that she knew about an alliance, and he also kind of knew where that would have come from. And this is kind of the start of where you're going to start to see some tension between yourself and Tommy and Christie and Jackson and all of that.
Yeah, because this is why it was so hard having somebody in the house that I knew. It's like it could either be helpful or a hindrance. And it was 100% both, because that's so, it was hard. It was very hard to navigate. But I also because I wanted to earn Kat's trust. So I wanted to keep her in the loop, but at the same time, I was scared of her running her mouth. And so I was scared of hurting her feelings. I didn't want her to know that all of these people had, because it seems it's also like very high school, you know, it's like there's a clique and you're not in it. It sucks. And I didn't want her to be hurt by the fact that she wasn't in it. And so that's why I kind of tried to downplay it. But I also wanted her to know, because we were on the same team, and I, didn't want to be keeping big information like that from her, because if and when she had found out about it elsewhere, she would have lost huge trust in me if I hadn't told her that.
So Cliff is the one that's evicted here, and obviously he's next to Nicole. Did you have any reluctance to evict Cliff? Because you did, Jackson a little bit more so, but you did have a relationship with him at the time.
Yeah, no, and I did. I had a really good relationship with Cliff, and so that was a toss-up, because my main motivation for not evicting Nicole was I thought she had kind of been screwed, and I wanted to stick up for how she'd been treated, especially by Nick and Bella, because it really just did not sit well with me at all. And I know that you have to think about game first in Big Brother, but on a personal level, I didn't want to tolerate that. But then on a game level also, it was like, okay, if only a select few of us save her in this game, then maybe that can be the final thing that really pulls her to our side. And so I was hopeful about that, even though that was a tough decision, because I felt really good with Cliff. So good to the point where when he was evicted, he went out immediately, won Path to Redemption, came back in the house, and I immediately went up to him, because I always wanted to be very straight up with people. And so I was like the first one to go up to him, and I said, "I'm sorry." And he goes, "It's okay. It's okay. I know that," he's like, he was trying to count the votes in his head. He's like, "I know that you and Jackson voted to keep me." And he was trying to figure out who the other people were. And I was like, "No, Cliff." I looked him in his eye and I said, "I didn't. Cliff, I voted you out." And I was like, "I'm so sorry." And so like he and I were good, because we were good because he thought that I would keep him. It was a no-brainer for him. So, but I didn't.
Yes, he talked a lot about the a conversation that he had between both you and Jackson after being evicted, where he kind of felt like okay, you guys are telling me like, oh, this is all good, like this is all part of the plan, like you're hoping that I'm coming back, like what?
No, that was bogus. Yeah. Obviously.
I guess it doesn't matter eventually, and I talked about this with Cliff, because despite that, he still ends up trusting Jackson far too much later in the game. So Cliff is then going to win the HOH, and his plan is pretty quickly going to be he wants Jack and Jackson on the block. In the meantime, Jackson is coming up with a plan to volunteer himself for the block, because Christie has this power. He's gotten Christie to agree that she'll use the power if he goes up on the block. He's hoping that he'll go up next to I think it was Bella or Nick or something.
I think either one of them.
Mm-hmm. And of course, that's not going to be what happens. But you did have a conversation with Kat at this time where you kind of entertained the idea of like, if Jackson leaves, is that the worst thing for me at this point?
Because I had to think about that, because getting closer with Jackson meant more of a target on my back. And also, it's like, of course, these thoughts cross my mind, but also sharing them with Kat again just brings her closer to me, knowing that she was really my priority, and that she was, because I didn't want her to think that he was taking rank over her at any point, because truly she was, until she was evicted, the whole time that she was in the house, she truly was my only final two. And I said it to her, I said it in the DR, that if it came down to Kat or Jackson, like, she was my final two. He was third in my eyes. And so I wanted to reaffirm that to her. I really didn't want her to ever lose trust in me. So I wanted to, you know, any hesitancy that I had, I definitely wanted to express to her. And it was, you know, it was scary that I knew I was attached to Jackson and that eventually we would become a target, because I knew it was coming. It was just a matter of when.
Mm-hmm. You also got into a pretty big fight with Jackson this week. This is the week that he's a have-not. And
oh my gosh,
yeah, and then also, you know, you had talked about, you know, talk about the cameras and stuff like that, and he was upset about feeling like you were doubting the relationship, and then you made a comment about his abs, and that kind of turned into a whole thing.
Yeah, that was a whole thing. Oh my gosh, that man. I mean, you guys, if you've seen live feeds, you know how much that man eats. And so I don't know why in the world he volunteered to be a have-not, because that week was all volunteer basis. And you know him, he's like, I just want to experience everything. I want to throw a rogue boat. I want to be a have-not. I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, I get it. But also chill, bro. So he was a have-not, and he went from eating like 4,000 calories a day or 5,000 or whatever, like a lot of food. He literally constantly eats, to starvation because of slop, because slop is disgusting. And I tried to make fun things out of slop for them. They were just like deep frying it all. It was disgusting.
Yeah, Sam talked about that.
So nasty. I don't know why they just deep fried their slop. They made it like rock hard.
Yep.
So I finally, like, I got sick of watching them make that shit. And so towards the end of the week, I started making like slop burgers for them, like a bunch of different things. I made like pudding out of I like sifted out just the powder from the slop. And anyway, made some like pretty good stuff. Oh, and some like peach flavored oats using peach squencher. It was actually really good, like a peach cinnamon. It tasted like peach crisp. Oh, it was really good. Anyway, I joke around that I get hangry because if you don't feed me, I get super cranky. Oh, he blows me out of the water with his hanger. When he doesn't eat, it is like the world is actually ending. So yeah, he was really not fun on slop. He got a little dramatic, and like I again, like, didn't realize, because it's, you know, we're still learning about each other and learning about each other's little ticks. And I'm such a dry, sarcastic person. And I know that my humor, a lot of people don't get, and it comes off as bitchy because I am so dry and sarcastic. I always have been. I know somewhat of it is a defense mechanism, and somewhat of it is just the fact that I was raised around cowboys, and that's like the type of sense of humor. You just like poke fun at and are super sarcastic and people. Anyway, so I was joking around with him, and it got taken way more seriously than I meant it. Anyway, oh my gosh, slop was a bad week.
Yeah, I mean, was there any point where you thought this was it for the relationship?
Oh yeah,
because it definitely
for sure
seemed that way.
Because I'd already had doubts, and then I guess to finish that part of the question too, because I'd had doubts from the beginning, because I am a really because I am a really private person. I'm a pretty conservative person. I mean, I come from a very conservative family in Wyoming in terms of just like, we don't really talk about emotions very much. We don't talk about relationships very much. And in relationships, I'm usually kind of old school. And so it was very weird to be in the public eye and to have accelerated emotions, because it's like, everything is just so accelerated. I mean, you move so much quicker because you're around these people 24/7. So it's like Jackson and I we got really serious right away, but I was so hesitant and so like indecisive of whether I wanted that or not, because it's like, okay, there's an age difference. I want to be realistic of if this is even going to work in the real world. I don't know. And also, if it's going to hurt my game, then I just want to be done with it right now. But at the same time, I was like really falling for him, and the feelings scared me. And there was just a lot of different reasons. So I was all back and forth. And the big thing was like, I didn't really know, and this is naive of me, I didn't watch live feeds, and I know people are like laughing. I've never watched live feeds before, and I know people are like, yes, you idiot. And so I really didn't know how that would work out. And I asked, I asked in the DR, like, do I need to worry about anything? And I was told that I didn't, which obviously I did need to worry about. So anyway, I was just really indecisive. And so I get it. It wore on him because he's expressed that to me a lot, how he was like, well, I just never felt like I was good enough. And I'm like, and I get it, because I acted like that because I just couldn't make up my damn mind.
Yeah. So Jackson is going to win the veto here. And Christie has her power, so theoretically everything should be fine. But she is freaking out a little bit. And she ends up making a deal with Cliff, which she sort of brings to you guys, the 6 shooters, and says, hey, I just made this deal. I'm amazing. Isn't this great? What were your thoughts about this deal?
That's how Christie operates. I just did this. Here you go. It's like, I don't know. Christie, if she were a true team player, it would have been hey, is this a good idea? I'm thinking about making this move. How do you guys feel about it? But that's not how Christie operates. Christie just does whatever the heck she wants, and sometimes she'll tell us, sometimes she wouldn't. I don't know. I also was really hesitant about Christie actually using her power on Jackson because I didn't trust her from the beginning. So I was very, very skeptical. Obviously the deal worked out. But yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, from this point on, it does seem like Cliff really is able to build and maintain a reputation for being very honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is helpful.
Yeah.
So
True.
Going to the next week after Bella is evicted, there was a little bit of shenanigans with like blueberry pancakes and so on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because we heard her out, just because we listened to her, she took that as like, oh, well, Holly and Jackson are going to flip the vote and keep me. And then everybody lost trust in us. And it was like, just because Jackson was literally like joking around saying, if we decide to do it, we'll give Nicole a code word. But also Bella was like telling us that she already had Nicole and probably Jess. And then she was telling Nicole that she already had Jackson and I, when in reality, she didn't have any of us truly. So we just went along with it a little bit because obviously like we did consider it, because obviously you have to consider everything, but we hardly gave her any reason to think that we really would keep her. Especially me, I like hardly even said anything during her campaign, and Jackson was just like, okay, if we decide to do this, we'll say blueberry pancakes.
Well, it's very similar to the Nick and Bella situation from week 2, where the rest of the 6 shooters were kind of already starting to lose trust in the two of you, and so when it became known that like you were even talking to Bella, it was like, well, that's confirmation that we can't trust them,
right? And talking to her meant we listened to her campaign. She campaigned to every person in the house.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, come on, you guys.
Yes, and
whatever.
so heading into the next HOH, things might have been a little tense depending on who won the HOH,
Right.
but you are the one that ends up winning. And Sis was not super pleased about this because Jackson was like, "No, you got to win," and you were like, "Oh, I would have given it to you."
I mean, I was just telling her that. I really didn't want to give it to her.
Yeah. But you did want to counter the sort of the perception, because a lot of people were already talking about, like, is this going to be Jackson's HOH? And you were like, you're not sleeping up here with me, which didn't last super long, but I think was, good intentions there.
Yeah, well, I split the week. I was like, okay, because also I knew that I was starting to lose some trust within my alliance, especially with the girls. And it was like, at that point, I was trying to distance myself from Sis so that she and I didn't become targets and didn't go up on the block next to each other and have me go home. But at the same time, but I still wanted to keep them close enough. And so I was like, all right, let's split the week and have the girls sleep up there with me for the first half of the week, and then Jackson sleep up there with me for the second half. And also it was important that people knew that we were playing our own game. I wanted to always be the lesser of the targets between the two of us, but I really didn't. And even just for my own pride as a woman, I didn't want people thinking he was running my HOH, because in all honesty, he was the only one not telling me what to do. Mm-hmm. Christie, of course, tried to boss me around. Well, I mean, Christie tries to boss everybody around, yes. But it's like my alliance was trying to tell me what to do. Jackson genuinely wasn't. And it bummed me out when, obviously live feeders see a lot more, but that bummed me out a lot in the episode, because the only conversation that they show was the one conversation where Jackson happened to be in the room. Because during my HOH, I did one-on-ones with every single person. Every single person came up and talked to me in the HOH room, and I had Jackson leave for all of them. Mm-hmm. But then Sam came up a second time to talk to me, because he knew he was going up. And that conversation might have even been after he was already up.
He had a lot of conversations with you.
I can't remember. I mean, he was up there a lot. Yeah. He was up there a lot. But the only conversation that they aired was the one where Jackson happened to be there. He was up there in my bed. And that was the only one that made TV, mm-hmm. which really bummed me out, because every one-on-one was just me. And Sam was up there a ton, back and forth to my room. And it was always just me, except for the one time when Jackson was there. Anyway, whatever. But I didn't want people to think that he was running my HOH at all, because he wasn't. And it pissed me off that people thought that he was the reason I stayed on the vine. No, I wanted to win that HOH. I just wanted to do so without getting a target on my back. And so, and I didn't want to piss Sis off, because I knew that, she's sensitive. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted her to think that I wanted to throw it to her, and I wanted to stay on her good side. And even when she was up there, because she was really, really trying to get me to drop. She really wanted to win an HOH. And so she was saying, I'll give you this, I'll give you backups, I'll give you lasagna, which is our code word for money. Mm-hmm. She was like, I'll give you whatever. And I was up there contemplating it and trying to look like a little weaker of a competitor than I actually am. When in my head, I was like, are you kidding me? No. The fact that I'd hung up there for 2.5 hours or whatever it was, I wasn't gonna throw it at that point. And that's what Jackson was like, why, as a competitor, he was like, why in the world would you throw that? You've hung up here for hours. And so, it's definitely seen him pushing me to not throw it, but also because I'm not a super athletic person. Sis is a D1 athlete. She's 22 years old. She's 9 years younger than me. I was never an athlete growing up. I was a dancer, but I quit when I was 16. That was a long time ago. I'm not a super athletic person. I don't go to the gym. I don't work out. And so when I stayed on the vines that long, it was like, oh, shit. I'm doing a lot better than I thought. And so the competitive, grit in me and, the country girl was like, all right, you're doing it. Like, this is time. You're winning this. I just didn't want to look like too strong of a competitor. Anyway, but yeah, that really pissed Sis off a lot. She was not happy about that.
Yeah, well, Christie and Sis had a conversation after you won where they were kind of like, they were worried that you would sort of realize that you were on the bottom of the 6-shooters and that you would not target Nick and Sam. Again, it really reminded me a lot of the Nick and Bella HOH reign where you guys were kind of trying to like appease them and be like, hey, we're still on your side. Don't target us, target the people we want you to. So Christie was kind of doing the same thing, and she definitely was trying to push Nick and Sam onto you, and that's going to be a struggle throughout the week as Nick wins the veto and you want to put Nicole up, and Christie's trying to make sure that you don't.
Well, and she also wanted me to be, burying her dirty laundry because she had, formed an alliance with Nick and Sam, and without telling the rest of us. And so she wanted to make damn sure that Sam went home after Nick won the veto. And I did contemplate keeping Sam to be, a sniper to take shots at my own alliance. But there were a couple of reasons that I wanted to win that HOH. Because also it was so clear that there were already targets. It was an easy HOH to win. And if my MO this whole time is to fly under the radar, then why would I want to win during a hard week? I knew that it was going to be easy. When I was hanging up on those vines and I'm looking over, and it pained me because Sam was so sweet and like motivating, and obviously because everybody was, but he was like rooting us on, and I was like looking over at Nick and Sam, and I was like, damn, I'm going to hopefully send one of you home this week. Because it was easy. It was the easy way out, and I knew I wouldn't get a lot of blood on my hands. So that's another reason that I wanted to win it. And then it's like, I knew that best case scenario for my game was to stick with that plan because not as messy. And I wanted to get back in like better graces with my alliance. That's when I was kind of starting to, even though I knew at some point I needed to break away, I thought it was premature at that stage. It was like, I need to separate myself from these people, but I don't think now is the time. And so I wanted to like nourish that relationship. And so I had the girls sleep in my room, and then I, went with the original plan, but it was very, very tempting to keep Sam to take shots.
Mm-hmm. And
then there was like nobody else to put up really except Nicole. It didn't really make sense at that stage to send anybody else home. And I really didn't know where Nicole's head was. I knew that there was more going on than, obviously there was a lot more going on than she portrayed. And I didn't think, I really did not think she was on our team. Mm-hmm. And it worried me. And so she was the only person that I could make sense of putting up.
Yeah. And so Kat at this point lets you know about the Cliffs Angels alliance.
Yeah.
And she is kind of the one really pushing, like, you can't trust Nicole. Nicole is not to be trusted. She does not have y'all's backs.
Right.
And
Exactly.
I think part of this comes from the fact that the blame that's being sort of shifted onto you and Jackson and a little bit to Kat for talking to Bella the previous week. It's basically, it's like either you or Nicole. And I think she felt like by throwing Nicole under the bus, it would help exonerate you guys. I'm not exactly sure where it came from, but
yeah.
She's also going to volunteer for the block, and that's sort of another decision that you guys talked about, like using it to hide your relationship, but definitely left her in a very vulnerable position when everything sort of blows up.
Yeah, that was a dumb move.
Yeah.
That was so stupid. Yeah, I knew it was risky because I knew that people were already suspicious of our relationship. But I was hoping that it would help diffuse it. And also I was hoping that people would think that there were some like awkward tension because of our dynamic with Jackson. And I was hoping that maybe they would think like, oh, damn, she really wants to get her out. Or whatever, or doesn't care enough about her to put her on the block. So, and if I'd put Nicole up, it would not have been as a pawn. If I'd put anyone up next to Sam, they would have been my target, and I would have leveraged Sam to stay in the house and work with me. So I knew it was a big decision. It was like, if I'm leaving, or if anybody else is going on the block next to Sam, they're going home. If Kat goes up, Sam's going home.
Mm-hmm.
Was my hope. And then that, oh my gosh, that whole blow up, because at that point I did not know that Kat had told Jackson that we knew each other, and I didn't know that Jackson had told Jack. So I thought that this was a much safer plan. If I had known that there was speculation, genuine, real speculation that we knew each other, I wouldn't have risked that. But I didn't know. And then of course I didn't know, because that week too, that's when Jackson was getting more and more paranoid about Christie. And I was too. Obviously, I've seen Christie for who she was since the beginning, like literally since day one, when I was like, oh, this girl is like all over the place. I don't know if I can trust her. And she ran her mouth so much, even when we were very closely aligned. She worried me. And I was even trying to reel her in with, like, when we were closely aligned, it was like, stop blabbing, because you're going to get yourself in hot water and you might get me in hot water. So stop. So it was very early on that I was mistrusting of Christie. And then Jackson started to trust her less and less, for very good reason. But I didn't want him to just go full on try to pull, because he really did think that he and Jack had a solid relationship. But I knew that Jack was blinded by Christie. And I wish that Jackson had, because we talked about it a lot. He talked about trying to help Jack wise up to Christie. He talked about trying to drive them apart, or, pull Jack away from her, I guess. And I knew that was a handle with care situation. And I really wish that Jackson had brought me into that conversation. I wish I'd been there for that conversation, because maybe if it was like a 2-on-1, maybe if I were there, I could have helped make a little more sense of it, or whatever. I mean, it actually ended up ultimately working to our benefit. It just got really messy for a while there, but that was so stupid of him to go and tell Jack and expect Jack to choose anyone over Christie.
Well, that was the thing. He actually, he succeeded in terms of getting Jack to flip on Christie. Jack was actually anti-Christie. It was actually Tommy that was the problem, because sort of Tommy was sort of the real power in that crew, and he had the closer relationship with Jack. He had a final two with Jack, and so
they had a real final two.
Yes, and so Jack went to Tommy, who I think was also at that point kind of considering, like, well, maybe I should just drop her, but I know her, I have that connection. So he tried to work to keep the group together, and of course that meant trying to blame Cliff and Kat for, like, the typical sort of scapegoat strategy that's been working so far. But that didn't work with Jackson, who sort of explains, like, well, no, they're not lying because they know each other. And so then Jack goes to Tommy about that, and Tommy recognizes how threatening that is and decides he wants to flip this vote.
Know.
Yeah.
The hypocrisy. The hypocrisy. That both Tommy and Christie were really spearheading, trying to flip the vote, because we knew each other. And it's like, okay, come on. I mean, I get it, obviously, for game. But I was like, really, Christie? Really, Tommy? Oh, the hypocrisy.
Yeah, because this is the week you're really getting a lot closer to Cliff this week, reeling him in. I know at the time you guys talked about using him against Christie, and of course in the meantime he had sort of sniffed out the fact that there was a rift between Christie and Jackson, and he was definitely getting into Jackson's ear about Christie and trying to accelerate this. When Sam goes to Jackson to pitch against Christie, it all kind of clicks together for Jackson that Christie has been working against him. He wants to flip the vote,
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you're like, I mean, that'd be great, but Kat's on the block.
Yeah.
Can't
Yeah.
vote out Kat.
Yeah.
And so then you went to Cliff and you talked to him about Christie, and that's when he lets you know that Christie told him that Jackson was the rogue vote,
Yeah.
which seemed to me like the selling
Yeah.
point to you that, okay, yeah, Christie's definitely been
Yeah.
working against us at this point.
Yeah. It's like there's so many things. It's like I had a bad feeling for a long time, and then it's like there's only so many like little bits of information that you can get that stack up as evidence, against her. And I was like, all right.
Yes. So then, then Jackson goes to Jack and everything that happens there, and Tommy tries to flip the vote, and it seems like it's working. And so we caught some of this, but I think there was some of it that we didn't catch as well, where you overhear Tommy talking with Nicole Sis, with Sis, and that sort of gets you like, this is not good. And you get into action. It seems to me like this is perhaps your finest hour in the house, the fact that you managed to keep Kat in the game. Can you explain the strategy?
Oh my gosh, I swear I should get an Academy Award for that. I heard there was a weird energy. I knew something was going on. I just like sensed the energy, I manifested it, whatever. Oh my God. But I knew something was up. And so I started eavesdropping, and I heard Tommy and Sis say, well, should we tell Sam or not? And I knew that Sam's eviction speech was going to be different based on whether he thought he was going home or not, because he wanted to say to Zach and Bradley, Daddy's coming home, if he knew he were going home. And so that's what they were talking about. I was like, oh shit, not only are they flipping the vote, like they're well into this. So I went and told Jackson, and then Tommy came out and he was in the kitchen. And Tommy and I are very much on the same wavelength. And so I figured, he would respect me enough to tell me what was up, and he would be transparent with me. And so I would like basically corner him in the kitchen. I was like, what's going on? And he was like, I don't know, nothing. And I was like, are you flipping the vote? And I like, he didn't want to tell me. And I like demanded it out of him. I was like, Tommy, this is my HOH. We are in the same alliance. You need to be honest with me. And so that's when we went into the boat room, and he told me, Jackson told Jack that you and Kat know each other, and filled me in. And then as Tommy and I are talking, more people start to come into the room. And then that's when I was just like, and I'm like doing my makeup, getting ready for live night, which is like just so awkward and funny that like that's when this happened. But I was just like so dumbfounded seeming and confused by it, and I kept saying like, wait, who knows each other? Me and Jackson? People were like, no, not you and Jackson, you and Kat. And I was like, oh, what? No, Kat and I don't know each other. What the heck? And then I got pissed off at Jackson, which I was, to be honest, I was mad at him, but I way oversold that and was like furious with him and furious that he would betray me and wondering where, like, and try to use me. I acted like he was trying to use me, falsify information, and manipulate Jack with it. I was like, I don't care. Like I can do damage control later, and Jackson's already the bad guy. So it doesn't matter if I make him more of the bad guy, but I wanted to make sure that he was the bad guy and not Kat. And I was like, Kat does not deserve this. Like, yada, yada, whatever. Anyway, Academy Award winning performance, if I do say so myself. And Kat stayed.
Yes, she did. It was a close one. But
very
loud.
Wow.
That definitely was the turning point for your game in different ways, in the sense that it was basically the end of the 6 shooters and kind of the start of like you starting to be a little bit on the outs and needing to try to work your way back in. Eventually, it's gonna be competition win after competition win. keeping Cat definitely necessary, as it basically acts as a buffer in the one of the few weeks that you were not in power.
Yeah.
So Cat stays in the game, and we get to the next HOH, which Jess is going to win, which, total wild card, out of nowhere. And so Cliff and Cliff's Angels, essentially, Cliff and Nicole really would love for the 4 of the 6 to be targeted, knowing that after what just happened, it's clearly you and Jackson that are on the outs. Cliff's idea is, let's use the 2 to attack the 4, and of course Kat is also selling that because she's close with you guys, although she kind of wanted to make sure Jackson was on the block, which was definitely risky because Christie still had her power. I really disagreed with that, with those nominations. But what are you gonna do? It worked out because she won the veto. But so you did a lot of damage control after day 44, after Jess wins the HOH, and it seems to be working for a little while, but it sort of eventually, once the nominations come through and the veto is won by Jess, and it's very clear that, Jack is kind of the one that's going to go home. Christie and company were expecting at that point that you would basically be voting Jackson out, and when it became clear that that was not the case, that's when the relationship between you and the rest of Six Shooters finally kind of gets put out of its misery.
Exactly. And honestly, day 44 was one of the best things that could have happened to us, because we both knew we wanted to separate ourselves from the alliance we'd been working with, and we started to get there was distrust towards us, and that was nerve-wracking, and there were just a lot of, it's we needed to reset, we needed to reprogram our game. And so I was so happy that day 44 allowed us to totally be on the outside, because we were less threatening to the other side of the house, and even within our alliance, it was oh well, they have no one. And that was our point. We really harnessed it and ran with it. We slept in the have not room. We really just, oversold the fact that we had no one but each other, and, poor me. And so, and I had a good relationship with Jess. And so actually when she won her HOH, I spent a lot of time up there. Cause just on a personal level, it's that's who I wanted to be around, was Jess, Nicole, and Kat, because I just liked them and I wanted to be around them. And so it was kind of good because I got to sort of nurture those relationships a little bit more. And Cliff as well. And then start to kind of think a few steps ahead. I didn't want to start reassembling an army then, because it was way too premature, and I didn't want anybody to think that I was using them out of desperation and using them out of necessity at all. So I just kind of existed and worked on my social game, but didn't really talk a lot of game, but always tried to be there when Jess was in her HOH room, to just kind of make sure that Jack was still the target. And because obviously I was never going to vote Jackson out, even if I pretended like I would.
Yes. And so you had sort of initially been targeting Sis at the beginning of that week, but that shifted toward the end of the week. Kat was still very anti-Sis for a while, but eventually the two of you kind of come to the agreement that it's got to be Christie. Christie and Tommy are the most threatening people in this house. They have to go, either Christie first or Nicole or Tommy first. You kind of I think you wanted Christie first and Cliff wanted Tommy first, if I'm remembering correctly.
I always wanted Christie first. If I'd in an ideal world, Tommy and I would have been on the same team until the end. We always I feel we had sort of an unspoken, just, I don't know, respect for each other's games, unspoken, I don't know. I just always loved Tommy. I never wanted to be against him. I wanted to break up him and Christie. And I did know that he was a a threat for sure. And I would rather him be a target than me, obviously, but especially because he and I were kind of similar in our gameplay. And so normally I would see that as threatening and want to get rid of him. But no, I always wanted Christie out before him.
Yes,
always.
and he really like threw a Hail Mary there at the end of the week by approaching you and Jackson toward the end of the week and basically saying like, I love you guys. I don't want to, like maybe we have friends that are working against each other, but that doesn't mean that we have to be.
Yep.
And I don't want to go against you.
He was really good at doing that with everybody.
Yes. This is
I saw it.
It's really, I feel like it's this conversation that essentially is why he makes it to the final five, and all of his other allies are shot in front of him, essentially.
Yeah.
And so, he has this conversation with you. It seems to land well, especially with Jackson. And the two of you are essentially like, yeah, Tommy's not on our radar. We'll go after Christie. Yep. We'll go after the other people. Yep. Tommy will be last.
Yep.
On the
and it's like, if you're going to live in a house with somebody for 99 days, you want to enjoy it. And, Tommy's a blast to be around. So there's also that. I mean, it doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm. And so Jack is evicted, and we head into the next week where Tommy wins the HOH, and lucky for you guys, you had that great conversation with him, and he does want to keep you both safe, but he wants to sort of disarm you, make sure that the link between you and Cliff's Angels is severed, and so he's going to be targeting Kat, and of course, the field trip kind of gets in the way briefly, but that gets nullified. He was never putting Jackson up, so it didn't even matter that Jackson won the safety. Eventually it becomes Cliff and Kat on the block. So initially you guys kind of thought like, okay, so Cliff is the target here. Cliff's probably going home. Yes. Cause you were just talking about like in the previous week, you were kind of intentionally sitting back like, hey, we're alone. And this is the week where you kind of continued doing that strategy. And this is the week where I felt like, guys, you got to start getting involved because you're going to lose an ally here. And you kind of, I think, sat back maybe a little too long because by the time you realized that it was going to be Kat, it was a little bit too late.
Yeah. I don't know if it would have changed. Like, I really don't know if things would have been different. But yeah, because really what sealed the deal with that is before Jack left, he told Tommy, you need to get Kat out. And like, she's playing every side of the house. She's a threat. You need to get her out.
Well, he tried that blackmail attempt on her.
Which blackmail?
Jack
or Tommy?
It wasn't part of the episode. He had a couple of plans. One was to offer a deal to Cliff, which Cliff obviously declined. But another one of his plans was to go to Kat and essentially say, wouldn't it be terrible if Jess found out that you were a vote, that you knew about the Cliff vote between Cliff and Nicole? Like, wouldn't it be bad if they found out about how you've been, kind of in the middle of these? Like, he was trying to blackmail her, and it was very funny.
Yeah, and didn't.
She wasn't
really.
Yeah, she was not having it. So. So throughout this week, as the target's falling on Kat, you are also becoming, I think, bigger and bigger targets for the rest of the house as Nick is really trying to put together a coalition to form against you. He even wanted to get you on the block that week, and so when that failed, it was that he needed to get Kat out, and he wanted to bring together a group of 6 people to pull in Cliff and Nicole, who he had been getting closer to. And target the two of you, and that's going to be the 6 deal. And of course, he's also going to make his own deal with you to cover his bases.
Yeah. Freaking Nicole or freaking Nick, I called him out on that.
Yes, but when the deal was proposed to Nicole, she ended up telling Jess about it, who then went to Sis and went to you and kind of started to blow a bunch of stuff up, which just like caused utter chaos.
Blew up everything.
Yeah.
I don't know what she was doing. I don't know what her motive was there. I don't know what she was thinking. I'm super glad she told me about the 6.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jess. But also she started like just gossiping about like personal drama and just blowing up everything.
Talking about how Nicole didn't like it when Christie and Sis were laughing at Cliff and how you were a part of it somehow.
Yeah, because I was there, because I saw them laughing at Cliff and making fun of him. And Nicole, I was in the room when Nicole brought it up.
Yeah.
So then she said that I said it or something. And
it was so weird too, because when Nicole was talking about it, Jess was just like staring into space like, Nicole was like, I felt like Nicole was so emotional and Jess was just like,
Right. I was like, I didn't even know she heard that. And then all of a sudden she's, yeah, whatever.
Very strange.
That was a weird night.
It was very weird. Jess was exhausted. Like this game, until you've played it, you really don't understand the toll it takes. It really takes an emotional toll on people. And it was hard on Jess. She got really just drained and exhausted. And that was the point where she was just hitting a wall. Like, and I just don't think she was just overwhelmed, I think. And I'm not really sure what her intent was there, but it got messy. Yeah. And well, at the very least, you now have like full confirmation that these people are against you.
Yeah.
Jackson is going to overhear Sis talking about like, who do they have? They have nobody. And so
they don't win comps. They have nobody.
And you guys are in trouble here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot water. That's when the game got fun. That's when the game got really interesting.
Well, that's when you started trading wins off with Jackson.
I know. It was like, all right, I guess the whole like under the radar thing, like, out the window.
Yeah.
A little bit. I still kind of played under a little bit.
So Kat ends up being evicted. She blows up Cliff's Angels. She's disappointed in Cliff. Nicole's students think about how they're going to think about it. And she ends up being evicted. You did vote to evict her reluctantly. And then we get to the slip and slide HOH, where this is kind of a must win for Jackson. And we were basically
Jackson or myself.
Yes. And it definitely felt like this was, this usually goes to somebody who's very tall and very athletic, who's not going to like fall all the time. And we knew that Jackson had hurt his ankle. So we were wondering if that was going to impact his performance, because otherwise he'd be the heavy favorite to win this one. Ultimately, it did not impact his performance. He killed it. And with that, things are going to start to turn around.
Also, a little side note. Did it show? I don't know if live feeds could see. The episode surely didn't show. I was right behind him. Right behind him. Which that comp, like you said, the favorite to win it would be a tall, heavy, athletic guy, because you need weight, you need gravity for that. You really do. And I did not fall once, and I was right behind him. Yeah. Like Nick would have been, I think Nick tried to say, a few people tried to say after that, like that they threw it, and it was, no. The plan going into that was to throw it so that Cliff or Nicole would win and take the shots for them, do their dirty work for them. But no, once they realized it was slip inside, they certainly did not throw it. So a few of them were trying to say afterwards that they threw it, but no, they didn't.
Yeah, they didn't want Jackson to win.
Yeah, exactly. So I knew if Jackson didn't win, because I was worried about his foot too. I knew if he didn't win, I needed to win. So I was busting my ass, and I beat Nick. I beat Christie. I beat everybody that thought they. Anyway, just wanted to point that out there, because then later when the jury's like, well, what did Holly even do? And Sis was like, Holly didn't even do anything. And I was like, I mean, I beat your ass in like every comp. Like I was right behind Jackson in a comp that I shouldn't have won. Anyway, just wanted to point that out.
There you go.
But because I was worried that he wouldn't. I was really worried about his foot. So that was a week where it was like, okay, no BS. One of us has to pull this out. So luckily he won, and things were able to shift.
Yes, and Cliff is going to be talking to Jackson a lot, pretty quickly, like, explaining more about what was happening the previous week. And he was, like, what am I going to do? They're offering me a deal. I got to take it. But you guys have always had a close relationship. And so it only makes sense that you guys would sort of team up with Cliff against the other group who have more numbers and are more threatening anyway, who are clearly coming for you. And Cliff's sort of thing is that, like, Nicole's got to come along too. No putting Nicole up. I want Nicole to be in on this as well. And so this is when the four of you start to discuss working together moving forward.
Yeah. And that was good because I wanted to work with both of them for a while. And I'd kind of planted the seed a little bit at different times. Not too much because I really never wanted to be one that went back on my word. And again, I never wanted to use people out of necessity. I wanted to establish genuine relationships that hopefully I would have a return on investment with. And that was a point where it would. And also with Cliff, after he made that deal, of course I was, betrayed, but I knew that it was a smart game move for him. And I knew that I wouldn't do anything different, but I did have a conversation with him upstairs by the fish tank. I sat him down and I was like, come on, Cliff, like, you and I are straight shooters. I've always had your back. I can't believe, I was like very just blunt with him. I was like, I can't believe you did this to us. Like, kind of just trying to guilt trip him a little bit. So so kind of to stick a little IOU in his pocket. But then, from that, it organically happened that the four of us started working together, which I was thrilled by. I saw them as similar game players to myself and had been wanting to work something out for a while. It just hadn't made sense before. And so that was great.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like it took a while with Nicole to kind of trust her because
for sure.
Yeah, especially her relationship with Nick at the time was very scary for you.
Yes, and we'll get into that during my HOH. That's a lot of the reason that between Nick and Christie, that's a lot of the reason that I knew that I wanted Nick to go first.
Right.
Even though I knew Christie had to go, but Nick was very close with Nicole. And even though, I had a final four with Nicole, I also did want to disarm her.
Yes. He was also your white whale.
Yeah. And he was my white whale. And it's like, just for my pride's sake, it's like, well, I missed a shot with him before. I'm not going to miss this time. It was really hard for me to trust Nicole and even when we were in a final four, like, I trusted her, but not fully, especially because I knew, like, there was still Nick who ranked higher on the totem pole than anyone else, aside from Cliff. And she'd been so back and forth and played very emotionally at times that I was always a little worried and a little sketched out. But I was happy to, like, actually lock something in and feel more secure about it.
Yeah. So Jackson wants Christie out this week. You wanted Nick out, but Jackson wanted Christie out, and Jackson's the HOH. So Jackson's going to put Christie and Sis on the block. But it seems like it seems to me like you never really wanted Christie out this week. That especially once they made their pitches to you, like, Sis made a very bad pitch, and Christie made a pitch that kind of had you in tears. And
those were also a little. I was just trying to get on Christie's level.
Yes,
that was also a little. I was exhausted and bummed, but I was also, like, trying to kind of play off of Christie and her, like, a little more, I don't know, or, like, not get on her level, but yeah, because she had frustrated me so much, And I like we had had such a good like heart to heart, and then it didn't really matter because she still just like kept going against me. And so yeah, so whatever. I was frustrated. Yeah, but Sis's pitch sucked.
Yeah.
It was so bad. But I did want Christie gone because I didn't trust her, and I thought that she was more of a threat, obviously. But so at first I was like, why even bother putting Sis on the block next to her? But then I started thinking more about it, and it was like, you know what? Actually, Sis could easily float through this game, easily, and make it to the end. Whereas Christie, yeah, she's pissing us off, but she's pissing other people off too. So at the start of the week, I 100% wanted Christie gone. I was totally behind that decision. But it started throughout the week to make more and more sense to get rid of Sis, because it's like, if like who would take a shot at her? What would be their reasoning? Like, why would anybody? She hadn't done anything in the game. She hadn't like really won anything. Nobody really disliked her. It was like, but she also had allies. Like, she had Nick, she had Tommy, and also they had her. It's like Christie has Sis in her corner. Tommy has Sis in his corner. Nick had Sis in his corner. So it started to make more and more sense.
Yes, and then Taco Tuesday happens, which seemed like it really provided you with the ammunition you needed to finally kind of like talk Jackson into this.
Yeah, and honestly, like Taco Tuesday, it's like all of that was already, everything that they fought about, everyone already knew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it wasn't a big, I don't know, it wasn't as big of a revelation as everybody really thought. It just kind of proved how many people Nick had in his corner, but it's like we already knew that, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. I think Taco Tuesday got a little more I don't know, spotlight than it should have.
Well,
it was just dramatic. They were just being dramatic, but it's like I already knew everything that they both were doing, so it's like, okay, guys, big deal.
Yes, well, Christie is then going to sort of pitch herself to be like, I am now the anti-Nick candidate, and she's basically going to promise you the world, anything you want, master, I will give to you.
Good old Christie and her false promises.
Yes, because by the end of the week, she's already talking with Nick. I think if you hadn't won this HOH, there would have been peace between Christie and Nick, for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So you go into the next HOH after Sis goes home. And so you and Jackson had talked about throwing this HOH a few times. And afterward, it did seem like you were like, I didn't really intend to win that one. Did you intend to win it? Did you try to throw it? Or were you just kind of like, I'll just throw the ball?
No, I did. When I realized it was prank week,
mm-hmm.
and I already was like, I felt like we were in like better graces with everybody, and I felt, especially for me, like I felt like I was probably safe, but at the same time things can turn on a dime, and I didn't know like if Jackson would stay safe, and I didn't know like if Christie or Nick won it, I wouldn't have felt good. So especially knowing that it was prank week and we didn't know what was coming, I wanted to at least ensure my own safety. So no, I did try to win that, but at the same time, it's like, but here I am like really trying to fly under the radar, and I was the first 2-time HOH winner. So it's like, that's when I was like, oh, that was an accident. I didn't really want to win it, trying to downplay. Like, I don't even know how I did that. I don't know. Just I guess trying to downplay it a little bit. And then it was scary too, because I knew I was safe, but I didn't know what kind of repercussions could come with it. And I was terrified that something would happen and somehow Jackson would go home on my HOH.
Yeah. So you want to put up Nick and Christie, and you then, in a series of unfortunate events, tell Christie that she's going to be used as the pawn before you realize that you wouldn't have had to.
That was I regretted that the second I did it. I was like, why did I tell her?
She was so pissed.
I should have waited to see what the twist was, and I never would have had to tell her.
Yeah.
That was dumb on my behalf. I was trying to like really just earn trust with her and be really transparent and talk like we're working as a team. And that was my intent behind it, but it was premature. That was so stupid. I didn't need to tell her that.
Yes. Well, so you ultimately, once you find out what the twist is with America's Prankster, you're just going to put Nick on the block in the hopes that you can get him out. Nick wins America's Prankster, and this is where I really felt like Nick kind of dropped the ball because and you can tell me if this is true, but I felt like if he had gone to you and said, hey, look, I am America's Prankster, let's work something out, that could have changed your nomination and could have maybe kept him off the block.
It could have. I may have still put him up. But it's like, maybe we could have started working together then, maybe. And again, who knows?
Yeah, like, well, basically, because if he implies, like, if you put me up, I'll just put Jackson up. Like, that's not a good spot.
He could have threatened me, or he could have said, like, hey, let's work together. Either way, he could have leveraged it a lot better. And so he did. As soon as I realized it was him, which I figured it would be, obviously. I figured that was easy. Like, anybody that wins HOH, you just, whoever they're probably going after, you make them America's Prankster to stir the pot. Like, I figured it was him, and I was surprised that he didn't come to me and try to cut some sort of deal. I was thrilled that he put Christie up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, that was I feel like the vote was a lot more anti-Christie than it was trying to like screw with you.
Yeah, possibly. That's true.
That's what it seemed like from the outside, at least, because the Taco Tuesday had just aired, and so like the big storyline was Nick versus Christie, and I think people were really, she was the kind of the big villain of the season at that point.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Which I had a feeling. So yeah, he definitely could have leveraged that better. But at the same time, and see, he gave a good pitch once he went through with his nomination.
His condom pitch?
His condom pitch, yeah. Honestly, though, it was a good, like, obviously that wasn't aired.
Yeah.
But did live feeders see it?
Yeah.
Okay, but honestly, though, like, he did give a good pitch because he is charismatic and he is a good competitor. And honestly, when he makes like all these promises, promising the world, like, of course, I'm not going to trust anyone when they say that, really. But I trusted him more than Christie. And Christie was already going back on her word, which, of course, in true Christie fashion, I knew that she would. And she was already pulling back and like being hesitant. When I said she was going up on as a pawn, she was like, what? Me? And I was like, yes, yeah, duh. You literally just promised that you would do that for us whenever we wanted. Anyway, so I knew I didn't trust Christie. And Nick gave his pitch, and it was honestly pretty damn good. And it made me really start thinking, and not only his pitch, but he also came up to me in the HOH room when it was just me, and I'd like just woken up in the morning, and he came up and was just like very upfront and just hashed stuff out and made his first plea with me. And when he did that, I was like, damn, he made a lot of really good points. Maybe I should keep him. And just the fact that my mind went there was like, nope, this is exactly why I need to get him out. Mm-hmm. Because he's my white whale. And here he is making me reconsider taking a shot at him. And I'm the one who wants him out. So if I don't get him out, who the heck is going to get him out? You know, he was so good with so many people, even Cliff. Like, he was even good with Cliff. So It was just
Yeah.
way too dangerous for me to keep Nick in the house. Christie drove people crazy. I knew that other people would take shots at her. Nicole would never go after Nick. Tommy wouldn't. Cliff probably wouldn't.
I think at that point Cliff kind of felt a little bit similarly to you in the sense that he knew that with Nick there, he had to worry about Nicole's loyalty, and so I think he was very okay with letting Nick go at that point.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because that was huge. It was like, if I want this, because I was so happy to have the Final Four, and it's like, if I want this Final Four to work, sorry, Nicole, but I do have to ensure your loyalty.
This is also the Zingbot week. And that's when Zingbot calls you an old buzzard.
Yep.
Which you didn't seem to be a big fan of.
I mean, when it happened, at first I didn't get it. I was like, oh, I'm old. Whatever. Ageism, being ageist is a thing in this country, but whatever.
Well, yeah, it seems like it was like a little bit of a turning point in the sense that you started talking a lot about like how you were being portrayed in the show, and it seemed to really be getting at you, like how you might be portrayed in the show. You've watched it now. Were those concerns justified? Do you feel like you are happy with it?
Yeah, no, those concerns were totally justified. And I had a lot of reason to worry about how I was being portrayed. Obviously, we're all typecast. I think I was supposed to be a bitchy girl. There were a lot of reasons that I have to believe that. And it was like, and I had a lot of like internal struggle about that. And it was really hard to navigate like who I'm supposed to be versus like who I am. And it's like, I really wanted America to just see me. It was, I don't know. I was worried for a lot of different reasons. And because, yeah, I was trying to, in a sense, hide behind Jackson, but I also didn't want to just be seen as the girl in the showmance with Jackson. It's like, I wanted to come onto the show to empower other girls who feel like maybe they're not worthy or feel insecure, because I grew up with a lot of anxiety, a lot of insecurity, and I really struggled believing in myself and being strong. And so I wanted to inspire other girls that they could be strong. And then here I was on the show, just so frustrated that I felt like my only relevancy was my attachment to a man. And that not only would people see that, but they would focus on the fact that I'm older than him. And it was like, I'm a petite female who, yeah, I can fall in love and I can be a human and be vulnerable and, yes, have that intimate side in my personal life, but I can also be smart and not manipulative, but calculated, and confident and inspire young women. And it just bummed me out that I was afraid that wasn't being shown, especially because since I was downplaying so much in the house, I really only talked heavy strategy in the DR. Even with Jackson, I even wanted him to underestimate me a little bit. So I didn't really expose everything about myself. And in the house, I would really downplay my strengths. I would like sit in front of the memory wall and look at the faces and be like, oh my gosh, if face swap comes up, I'm going to be so screwed. I'm so bad at this kind of stuff. And it's like, no, I would have nailed that. But then I'd go into the DR and like talk heavy game and like spell out everything I was doing and be very calculated and concise and show where my head was. And then none of those DRs made it to air. And so, yes, the fears that I had of how I was being portrayed were somewhat accurate. So
You started
okay.
you really started talking to the cameras more often around this time, but usually it wasn't about game. Is there a reason you didn't talk more game to the cameras?
Do you remember Cliff Notes?
Well, Cliff kept doing it.
I know. Yeah, I know. I suppose I could have. I was way too damn paranoid. And I just like I would kind of like vent to the cameras, but I would get tired and like delirious.
You like to talk about like products and food.
Oh, like makeup stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sis and I were gonna start a makeup channel, which is so funny. And it's really funny because I've gotten so many questions. People are always DMing me asking about makeup. So Sis and I at the beginning were like, should we do a little makeup channel? Which is like really silly.
You also this, I believe this is the week where you got into one of the biggest fights with Jackson. You called him an effing asshole,
Yeah.
and he was very upset about some of the things that you were doing, and you were upset with some of the things that he was doing. And this is probably the biggest fight that made the edit as well.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
For sure.
Were very upset with the way that that Jackson in particular handled this fight. What are your thoughts on it?
So at that point, it is so hard to be in a relationship in the public eye when there's cameras everywhere, microphones everywhere, and you know we're newly dating, but we go straight from being strangers to living together. We're together 24/7 in a pressure cooker environment. And what is the key to survival in a relationship? It's communication. Good communication is everything. But were we able to fully communicate? No, because everywhere we go, we had a microphone. So there are a lot of things from my past that I don't feel comfortable sharing with the world. I've been through my fair share of shit with relationships, but also just life. It hasn't always been easy. I have a lot of scars. Jackson is the same way. He's lived a life harder than most, and more so than anyone could ever imagine. Nobody could ever put themselves in either of our shoes and the shit that we've unfortunately been through. But we don't want to talk about that on live TV. We don't want the world to know. We don't want to hurt our families or our loved ones. And so it was hard developing a relationship, but having to push the mute button on yourself in so many situations, because we could have easily resolved that if we were in the real world. But you know, I felt like he was putting walls up. He was trying to guard himself and protect himself, and I felt like I was being dismissed. But I also didn't know how reactive he was to different scenarios because I didn't know him on that level yet. And now I know in the real world that if something happens, he is very open and calm, and we have a conversation very like maturely, and we can resolve things very, very easily. But in there, emotions were heightened. Tensions were like, oh my gosh, ridiculous. And I didn't know how he would react if I fought back more, I guess, or like tried to like put him in his place. And so I was like just upset and like internalizing more. And it was weird because like we both just didn't know how we would handle situations like that. And it was just literally like bad communication because neither one of us felt free to communicate what we wanted to communicate. So that sucked.
It's honestly, it's such a weird thing to even like because you were in a relationship on a show, like you're now talking to a stranger about like a fight that you had in your relationship. It's like, it's weird.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's a weird world. And then we went back and we watched the fight together, and we watched every single episode together. We've actually been together 24/7 since the show ended. We literally spent like maybe 1 or 2 hours apart at most, when like one of us had to like run home to the other person's house, or to our house to like get clothes or something. Like, we've been attached at the hip, but now that we can talk freely, it's also a weird dynamic because we talked to Jess and Cody about this on their podcast because they can relate, even though they both went out really early in the show. That's the other thing, is that people don't realize showmances usually don't make it very far at all, let alone to the end. So it's like, of course we're going to have more to fight about because we've been through a lot through the show. But Jess and Cody could relate to that now that they're, once they got out of the house, it's like they didn't know anything about the other person that America didn't know. So it's like, now it's just wild. It's like we get to fully start learning about each other, basically from scratch, because it was just, we were only allowing each other to get to know each other like a little bit. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty cool, actually, but it's hard, and it's something nobody will ever understand.
Yeah. So Jackson wins on the wall.
Yeah. Oh, I was so mad I didn't get to compete in that. I wanted to win.
I'll definitely ask Jackson when I talk to him, but he says this is because he wanted to protect Cliff and Nicole. Because you guys, again, had talked about throwing this HOH. Is that the case? Would he have won it if he felt like they would have been safe?
Yeah, I didn't want him to win because we were at that point, it was like, holy cow, it's like the Mickey and Holly duo that somebody needs to take out because we just kept winning back to back. So I didn't want him to win. Ideally, I wanted Cliff or Nicole to win. I really wanted Nicole to win just for herself, on a personal level. Oh, it breaks my heart still to think about when she fell and I like ran over there to her because I knew how much that hurt her to fall. I really wanted her to win. But on a personal level, but on a game level, I would have preferred somebody else to win, but I just knew if Tommy won, I was afraid he would take a shot at Cliff and Nicole, or maybe Jackson and I, even though he said he was good with us. And like, I still felt good with Tommy, but he was really the one person that we were the most afraid of him winning. And Christie, because even though Christie was working with us, it was like, it's still Christie, so I still would worry. And so I even was like, Jackson was like, before he went into the comp, he was like, okay, like, let me know if you think I need to win or not. And so we were constantly checking in with each other. I was like, okay, because Tommy is still up there. And I was like, you gotta stay. Like, you have to stay. And then I kind of turned to Cliff and I was like, do you think Jackson needs to win this? And he's like, I mean, yeah, I think he does. And I was like, yeah, shit, I think he does too. So yeah, I was like, he was checking in with me constantly through the comp, and I was like, no, you gotta stay. Like, you can't let go.
Yeah, like when I talked to Tommy and I told him that that Jackson was saying afterward that he won it in order to protect Cliff and Nicole, Tommy was like, no. He knew I was gonna go after him, right? Like, obviously.
I don't know. And it was a toss up. I thought he could have gone after either one of us duos.
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, from my perspective, like it was, we had seen Tommy and Christie talk about how they were gonna go for you two.
Yeah.
And so he was very surprised that you two, like he thought there was like an unspoken understanding that you were going after each other at that point.
He was it's different with Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still always like felt good with him, but I didn't think Jackson was as good with him.
Yes.
Though. Like I thought he would for sure take a shot at Jackson.
Yeah.
And obviously I didn't want to get caught in the crossfire if Jackson won the veto.
Mm-hmm. So Jackson has won. This is Tommy, knowing that there's a problem in the relationship, is trying to be like, hey, let me be involved more. And you didn't like that because you didn't like having to lie to him. Jackson wants to take out Jess this week. And it seemed like you were more like, oh, but what about Christie? And and Nicole talked to you about how taking Christie out seemed like the smarter play. It seemed like you were agreeing with that, but then doesn't really go anywhere because Tommy ends up winning the veto. If Tommy hadn't won the veto and saved Christie, would you have pushed to get out Christie that week?
Yeah. Well, for sure. Yeah. I thought Christie should go for a long time. And I felt good with Jess. And honestly, I think Jackson would have been good with Jess as well. I get where he was going with that, but I don't know. It wouldn't have been my move. I for sure thought Christie should go.
But Tommy wins the veto, so it's not going to happen. Tommy and Christie did try to get Nicole to flip her vote, but that did not really go anywhere. Cliff and Nicole are going to talk a lot about which side are we siding with? Which pair are we siding with in the double eviction, the coming double eviction? Nicole was a bit more torn than he was. At one point, she was like, what if I just put up one from each side? And eventually, they kind of decide, you know what? Tommy and Christie, very threatening. And if we're anticipating mental competitions, then they're probably more threatening in the mental competitions than Jax and Holly. Plus, we don't have to break our word. And so ultimately, we get to the double eviction. Nicole is going to win. She targets Christie, and Christie goes home. And just like that, you have made it to the final five.
Yeah, I was glad. And see, it's like, that's why I was trying so hard to downplay my strengths. Because, and obviously Jackson was a huge threat in the game. Like there's no denying that. It was very obvious, but also at that point, people really only saw him as a physical competitor. They didn't quite, he was starting to show his cards with mental stuff a little bit, but I still very effectively hidden mine. So that was huge. That was huge that they chose us over Christie and Tommy.
Yes.
So,
and so Jackson then wins the next HOH, which was also pretty huge because if he had not won the HOH, then he's pretty much definitely evicted there, I think, at the final five because he loses the veto.
Yeah, I think so.
So, and of course, that's really like the last HOA or the last competition, really, even that was strictly mental. The rest of them are pretty much all have a pretty strong physical component to them. Perhaps BB Comics was one of the least physical left in the season from this point forward.
Yeah.
But that is definitely also going to benefit Jackson and yourself. Over Cliff and Nicole. Jackson puts up Tommy and Cliff with the intent to get rid of Tommy. And there wasn't any conversation between the two of you, and it wasn't until after the veto that it seemed like it kind of occurred to you that the person you leave off the block could use the veto and force you on the block. Would you have made the same decision to put up Cliff and Tommy if that had been something that you had been thinking about?
I mean, to be completely honest, I really wanted Tommy to win that veto.
Yeah. Well, you had like a moment before the veto, right? Because he then ratted that out.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was obviously, I had to cover my tracks with that. But no, I wanted Tommy to win the veto. And because obviously, like, we all wanted to break up a duo. I wouldn't have, though. I would have stayed true to my word for sure, and sent Tommy home if Tommy had won the veto, and been able to split up Cliff and Nicole. That would have been ideal for me. But I wouldn't have gone back on my word. I still would have sent Tommy out. So, of course, and it was also just base covering. Like, if Tommy did win it, I wanted to make sure that, like, he and I were still good. So, of course, that was a little preemptive covering of my bases. So, but yeah, and like, because I really, like, if I had won the veto, I still would have wanted Tommy to go, like, if the power were in my hands. So I really didn't, and it was like naive of me to think like, oh, we're final four, it's fine. They wouldn't do that to me. Like, I would understand if they thought the same and like would prefer that Tommy won, because then it would be out of their control. So like, I could understand that, but I didn't really think that having Cliff or Nicole win would be a bad thing, because I was like, you know, naively, like, really, whatever.
Were you thinking about
too trusting?
Yeah, were you thinking about jury votes at this point? Like what was your obviously, you know, getting to the end with Jackson, I imagine, was the goal. But were you thinking about, like, if that doesn't work out, who do I want to be sitting next to?
Yeah.
Were you thinking about like what your jury votes were?
Yeah, 100%. You have to think about that at that stage in the game. You sit and look at the memory wall and just calculate, like, okay, if I'm up next to so-and-so, who do I have? If I'm up next to so-and-so, who do I have? So, and also, like, trying to pin everybody against each other, though, too. I was like, well, if Cliff's up there, of course he'll win. And talking to different people. And I was like, well, but if Tommy's up there, he'll definitely win, you know?
So what was was plan A get to the end with Jackson? And if so, what votes did you think you had?
Yeah, I just, on a moral standpoint, I wanted to make it to the end with Jackson, because we've been saying that for such a majority of the game, or for so long in the game, that even though we really truly never had a final two, but it's like,
that's the first thing I thought of when you said that.
Just for the sake of not having a final two. And he tried to. After I won part 2 of the final HOH, he was like, can we lock it in, have a final two? And I was like, no, don't come to me now that I have some power. Like, no final two. But once my final two did go out the door, once Kat left, it really was like Jackson and I wanted to make it to the end together. And we talked about it all the time, of just kind of like walking out like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, like, yes, fighting against each other, but also being next to each other and being each other's biggest supporters. And he never turned his back on me. On a game and a personal level, we were just so close. And so from a moral standpoint, because oh man, it sucks. Sometimes I'm so mad that I'm from Wyoming, that I was raised by the parents that I was raised by, because I really it was hard for me to be manipulative and stab people in the backs. And I know you have to do that in Big Brother, but it was one of the hardest things for me. Is I had so many moral dilemmas, and I really did want to play the game with integrity, and I aimed to do that from the beginning. And so I knew I could never turn my back on Jackson, and I knew jury votes were going to be hard. I knew I'd have Kat, or I would hope that my own final two would vote for me anyway. I thought that I would have Christie and Tommy. I was, towards the end, I started to think otherwise, especially because having Christie feel duped by Jackson and feel like she went out because of him, even though it was like Jackson and I had made a deal with Cliff and Nicole, and that was the reason, we'd really been finessing that, and I'd been making it seem like it made more sense to go after them before me, because, like, why would it matter getting me out? But still, she gave the credit to Jackson for getting her out. And it's like, I know that a lot of votes are actually based on ego. And it's like, well, if he can get me out, then he deserves to win because he got me. And so I think that came into play with Sis, because Jackson is the one who evicted Sis. And same, like, I think Christie, and not to say that it's purely that, because it's not. There's layers to why, but it was like, these are the thoughts that are going on in my head. Like I was like, well, if Christie votes based on that, or just based on like obvious physical gameplay, I didn't really know where she would vote. I thought I would have Sis's vote for sure, because she was one of my good friends. And when I was leaving, she told me I was throwing my game away for Jackson, and that he was my biggest downfall in the game. And like, she really did not understand.
She was very mad at Jackson.
She was very mad at Jackson, but she also just didn't see my gameplay like at all. She did not understand at all what I was doing, in any capacity, but I still thought that I would have her vote. So that surprised me a lot. But and then Jess, I thought, would be a toss-up. Who else was in jury at that point? I knew Nick Jackson would have his vote for sure. Jack, I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Jack was in there campaigning against me for the stupidest reasons. Jack was saying that I didn't deserve to win because I didn't wear a costume when I hosted the Hide and Go Veto comp, because they had me wear a swimsuit, which was not my decision. It was what I was told to do. There was no costume for that. There was no costume. There was literally no costume. And Jack was in the jury house being like, well, Holly's not a team player. She doesn't deserve to win because she didn't wear a costume to host Hide and Go Veto. Whatever, Jack. But anyway, I knew I would never have his jury vote because I'm not his bro. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was around Final 7 or so. Tommy was talking to the cameras, and he mentioned you as kind of like being dragged along by Jackson, and that he didn't really respect your game. That I was like, uh-oh, this is... If she doesn't have Tommy, then she's in trouble, right? Because Tommy is going to be a big, I think, influence on the jury. And if that's how Tommy sees her, he also talked to Christie about that. That seemed to be how Christie saw you. And then, so of course, I think that preconception of you when Jackson is then the one to evict them plays into how they see how that happened.
Oh, for sure. And then also, I mean, it does bum me out that Christie definitely felt like that. And it's like, you know, she preaches feminism so much. And it was like, Christie, I had a heart-to-heart with her too, of like what I want, you know, how I wanted to, I guess I didn't really talk game with her, but I had a heart-to-heart with her about like what I stood for as a woman. And, you know, and it's all good of what she, you know, says she, you know, she said that she really related to me in what I wanted to stand for. But at the same time, she did not recognize anything I did in the game, didn't credit me for anything I did in the game. And it was like, just because my gameplay is not in your face doesn't mean it's not there. Like, you can respect different types of game. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Well, if you could change an aspect of how you managed the jury and how you you know, managed those votes as they left the house, like what would you change about it?
1000%. I realized that I had shot myself in the foot, and I started to acknowledge that and vocalize that towards the end. I was like, I really should have opened up to people before they went off to jury, because I really just kind of wanted to play out my social game. And I was like, oh, well, you didn't die by my sword. You know, I'm so sorry. But it's like, I had a say in everything that Jackson did. We were a team. We were functioning as a team. And I really only talked game in the freaking diary room, truly, like true nitty gritty game. And I wish that even just like in my goodbye messages, I was playing up to like my social game and staying in good graces with everybody. But I wish that I'd been like a little bit more savage and honest and told people like at least a little glimpse, a little something, because then I realized that they didn't know what I was doing. And even as little as like Sis not realizing why I distanced myself from her. Like, she thought that I was like choosing a man over her, and I think was personally hurt by that. She didn't get it. And like trying to appear like I wasn't as close with her. She didn't comprehend that, and I should have spelled it out. There are things that I did that I didn't spell out at all. And I knew that by the time it got to the two of us and we had 1 minute to plead to the jury, that was not even remotely long enough. I knew I was already, dead in the water, most likely.
Yeah.
Because it was just, there was not enough time to open up. And now I've had conversations with some people and they're like, oh, I get it now. And not to say that that would have changed their votes, because honestly, Jackson is one of the best players to ever play this game, ever. And so it's not to say that like it would have changed their minds. But for example, like Nicole and I at the end did start talking game, and I opened up to her a lot, and kind of let her in on little things that I was thinking and I was doing. And that earned her vote. And yeah, I really goofed there by opening up way too late.
Mm-hmm. So
I flew way too far under the radar. That was my 1,000,000% my biggest mistake in this game. I got underestimated in the house, and I got underestimated by America, and it bums me out.
Well, sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't, and it really can just depend on the jury.
I know, but right. But the jury, a lot of it, I do genuinely think was like ego. What's a nicer word for that? Like, I know hands down they respected his game. I think it's also, it is a small element of like, well, if he could get me out.
Yeah. I think they wanted to make sure they rewarded gameplay. And they just didn't see it from you.
They didn't see my game, which also, I'm sorry, but even just on a physical level, like I know that I hid all my mental strength, not all my mental strengths, but like I really, really downplayed my mental strengths. And then like I beat Nicole in a mental comp in the part 2 of the HOH. So I don't even know if they knew how the final HOHs went or not, but it's like for most of the game, I was totally downplaying mental strength. Yes. But even physical strengths, like really, could the jury really not respect that? Like, I'm sorry, Christie, the only physical comp that you beat me in, I think, maybe I should like think back on all of them, but was the first comp that I threw and got third in. And same with Tommy. I was like, Christie and Tommy, I beat in all the physical comps. So it's like, and Sis, I beat her in all of the physical comps. Everyone pretty much in that jury, I had for the most part beat them. Even in Coral Greek, even in that veto, it irks me so much that they didn't show. I was really, really close to getting that. I was so
people
close.
Remember wins.
I know.
They just remember the numbers.
They remember wins. And yes, Jackson was a physical beast, but it's like, did you guys really forget that I was on his heels in all of the physical comps? And I'm a lot older than him. I'm not an athlete. So yes, he was a physical beast, but it's like for what I'm working with, I would consider myself a beast too. Like just in the sense that like nobody would expect that. I don't know. I'm a small female. I'm barely over 100 pounds. I'm not strong. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not strong. The fact that I did so well in those physical comps just out of pure freaking determination, the fact that they just didn't even respect that and dismissed that was like, come on, you guys. That's just, there was a sense of bitterness for sure.
Yeah.
There, I think.
Well, Nicole has the veto. She uses it on Cliff. It forces you on the block.
Yeah.
Nicole wants to evict you because she has to break up a showmance.
Because it was a way smarter game.
Cliff is not as convinced, but he does come around to that idea. So the plan is to evict you. They make a deal with Tommy. He's going to throw the HOH.
Yeah.
He's going to evict Jackson the following week.
Yep.
But Jackson overhears that conversation and makes a play to discredit Tommy.
Yeah.
Now, this leads to basically an entire day's worth of arguments, it seemed, and Jackson calling Tommy a liar, Tommy calling Jackson a liar, Tommy, you're killing me. And it goes back and forth. And, you know, it seems as though Cliff and Nicole had decided ultimately to keep Tommy still. But then there was another blow up in the bathroom. And it's at that point that Nicole said she was a bit swayed by Jackson and his sort of his second approach, which was less abrasive, I guess, and more emotional.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, like right before the eviction takes place, you make a deal with Cliff and Nicole. Can you walk me through your experience of this whole thing?
So the fight happened, and I didn't know if that would be a savior or screw me. So I kind of tried to stay out of it a little bit. And even like in that last conversation in the bathroom, I tried to really reinforce the fact that like it probably did happen. But I was like, how am I going to go down for a conversation that I wasn't even part of? And yeah, the last conversation in the bathroom was pivotal because I knew that they were going to keep Tommy. It made so much more sense for their game on so many levels. But I went in there and was like, no, this is not okay. This is not happening. You cannot do this. And Nicole told me later that she's like, if you had just gone and sat down like Tommy did, she's like, Tommy literally went and sat in the nom chairs. She's like, if you had done that, if you had just been sad and bummed that you were going home and accepted it, she's like, you would have gone home. She's like, but you literally would not let us evict you. You like dug your heels in. And I was like, this is not right. This is not okay, but I will do whatever it takes. I will do whatever you want. And so I offered to throw the veto or throw the HOH and to throw the veto. And they came to the backyard room. Cliff and Nicole were getting ready for live show. Like we're like ready to go on. And they said, do you want to throw this? Or like, will you throw this? Walking out to the HOH, like, will you throw it tonight? And I said yes. And I shook both of their hands. Nicole said afterwards that she didn't shake my hand, but I watched the episode back. We definitely shook hands. So I shook both of their hands, and it saved my life in the game. And then going into the HOH, I mean, it's literally like within minutes of like, boom, shook hands, made a deal, boom, went to live show, Tommy gets evicted, boom, we're walking outside to the HOH. And so that's why I kept up my end of the deal and threw it, because I couldn't, like, I love Cliff and Nicole and I respect them, and I couldn't just as a person go back on my deal that I had just made them. I had literally just looked them in the eye and shaken their hands. And so I knew I couldn't go back on that. And like in the episode, it looks like Jackson's really pushing for me to drop, but it was more, I was like, do I have to drop? Like, when do I have to drop? Do I have to already? And he was like, yeah, like if you're gonna drop. But I knew, because for a few reasons. Just on a moral basis, I knew I had to uphold that end of my deal. But B, if I didn't, then I would, like, they would do anything they could to get me out. But also I knew that if I dropped, if I threw it, which was so hard for me to do, just because that was like, I was waiting for that comp all season. It really pained me to not get to compete in like the wall comp. And then it pained me to not be able to compete in this, where I knew I would have excelled. And I was so bummed because I was so excited for it. But I knew that if I threw it, I would gain their respect and their trust. And I thought that that would give me a better shot if neither Jackson or I won the veto. I knew we still had a 50-50 shot of winning the veto. But I figured if we didn't win the veto, because that's where the power is. That's truly where the power is. And that was the only thing that could save both of us, is if one of us won the veto. I figured if we didn't, though, then I wanted Cliff and Nicole to keep me over Jackson. And I thought that if I threw this, that not only would Nicole feel indebted to me, but Cliff would also respect that, because he always preached that he played with integrity. And what they didn't show was Cliff was on the sidelines after he fell. He was on the sidelines begging me to drop. And I know the episode didn't show that. I don't know if Live Feeder saw it, but he was like, Holly, please drop. So I knew I had to gain his trust. And I was just hoping that it, would come back around to reward me. And I knew we still had a 50-50 shot. So
yeah. I mean, if you were HOH, they wouldn't have been able to evict you anyway, though.
Well, me, yeah. Jackson would have still been in hot water if he had not won the veto. Mm-hmm. So it was like I either save my own self or I have a 50-50 shot of us both being safe. Right. I mean,
the odds would have been the same in the veto.
For saving. Yeah. The odds would have been the same for the veto. But the HOH, I could really only save myself, and so it was tough, but ultimately it really was like, and again, this is where I'm like, why am I raised by my parents? It was like, I just envisioned them watching that moment and me going immediately against what I had just sworn on. And I couldn't do it. I didn't feel right doing it. And I know it's Big Brother, but I just couldn't, in my heart, I couldn't go back on a deal.
Yes. All right. So,
and I know people can call me naive or stupid or whatever, and I'm sure that they have, but I just couldn't do that to them.
Yeah. So Nicole wins the HOH. She is now safe. And I did talk about this with Nicole, that you were kind of upset about the situation, and you mentioned that you were like, Nicole bullied me into throwing this, and I would have won it. I imagine you've talked to Nicole about this already.
Oh, that was one of the first conversations we had out of the house, because immediately, and I was, frankly, because we're human, we're all human. And humans get mad. I was pissed at just the fact that everything had transpired the way that it had. It's like, it didn't have to be like that. We could have gotten here so much more smoothly. And why did that all have to happen? I was hurt and I was infuriated, and they had 100% strong-armed me. And again, also the idea of bullying and everything had been put in my head from, can't really say, but ideas have been put in my head elsewhere, that was a thing. You know what I mean? So it's like, I was like, oh, wow, was she like, oh, damn, okay. If I'm being told this, then wow, maybe they were manipulating me more than I realized. You know what I mean? So it's like, then I really got in my head about it and was very mad that not only that I had felt forced to throw something that I shouldn't have had to throw, because in Final Four you're not throwing comps. That's not a time to throw comps. When has that been a thing? So I was mad and I felt strong-armed, but then what really pushed me over the edge is the very next morning when they approached me in the storage room right when I woke up. I was barely even awake. And they both, I was literally getting my stuff that had been packed. I had some bags of my stuff that I'd put in the storage room. I hadn't even brought my stuff back in after having to pack my bags on eviction night. So anyway, they cornered me in the storage room, and they're like, okay, well, we've decided that you can have permission to compete, but then you have to, do what we say and evict Jackson, blah, 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 blah. And it was just that, not only backing me to a corner and strong-arming me, but then saying, now I have permission. And it was like, whose game is this? What distorted sense of reality are we living in where it's like there had been so long in the game where Jackson or I had power. And then now that Cliff and Nicole had it, it was like, well, you have to do this and you have to do this and we'll give you permission on what you do. And just like in that moment, I was so frustrated. It was like, how did we, like in the famous words of Sam, it's like, how did I get like this? How am I just playing someone else's game? I was frustrated for sure.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, Jackson's going to win the veto. And he's obviously, despite the games that were being played, not going to use it to evict you. He's going to evict Cliff, which is, of course, very upsetting for Cliff and Nicole. They come up with a scheme to threaten their jury votes, which did seem to make you pretty happy.
A little bit. I mean, yeah, obviously.
Yeah. And Jackson was very upset about it at the time. But ultimately, Cliff is the one that goes home there. And then, you know, the rest is pretty much history here. Jackson wins part.
I knew that Cliff wouldn't really do that. Cliff idolizes Jackson. I knew that he would have, like, Jackson would have Cliff's vote. I was hoping that me proving to be loyal would maybe sway him, but he loves Jackson so much, like a lot.
A little too much, I think.
That I knew he would probably have his vote. So
yeah. So Jackson wins part 1. You win part 2. And I also talked to Nicole about this, where in the episode, you said that you had never been on a climbing wall, but there were people who are internet detectives who like looked at your Instagram and found a picture of you on a climbing wall.
Yeah, which was which is hilarious because I've literally never been rock climbing, which is ironic because I grew up in Lander, Wyoming, which is at the base of the Rocky Mountains, and it's world-class climbing. I've never been climbing because, to be honest, it scares me because I know too many people who've been in climbing accidents and have died. But my mom grew up climbing. My little sister is an avid climber. A lot of my friends, at our dude ranch, we pack climbers in to these beautiful granite peaks so that they can go climbing like really far off the grid. And so I've grown up around it, but I've never done it. Not until recently. Like there's one photo where it was literally a photo shoot. It was literally a photo shoot, which is the funniest part. The first one, because there's 2 photos. The first one was a photo shoot with this guy, Chris, and there was a rock that was like, I stepped up like a foot off the ground and held on, and he took a photo. I'm like in tennis shoes. I'm obviously not in climbing gear. And I even got called out on that photo by people that were like, did they just take this from a good angle where it looks like you're far off the ground? Because I was like literally just stepped up and it was like not even a real thing. Then, so that was one where I'm literally just holding on for a photo. But then the second one was in my gym where Jackson is working out right now, actually. I have been in my gym 2 times in my life. Because like I said, I literally don't work out. But I had my friend Jessa over for wine night. Kodak, please. So I had, Jackson just got back from said gym. So my friend Jessa, who works with me at Rockstar, was over for wine night. And she and I were in the living room drinking wine and like giggling. And my roommate texted me from her room and was like, hey, you guys are being loud. Can you please keep it down? And I was like, well, shoot. So Jessa and I, instead of keeping it down, we decided to take our wine downstairs because there's like a little hangout room next to our gym. So we were wearing matching outfits. We went downstairs and we're hanging out drinking wine. And then we decided to go in the gym and like make a funny video that she had seen online of these 2 girls like doing a workout video, like synchronized to music. Anyway, it was silly. So we're messing around. We're literally like tipsy. And I go on the rock climbing wall that's in my gym. It's not very, it's like, I don't know how tall it is. It's not very big. It's a circle and it'll rotate. And so I was like climbing on that thing and she took a picture and I posted it. And it was my first time ever being on that. But that in my mind does not qualify at all as climbing. And maybe I'm an idiot and maybe it does, and I take that back. But that was definitely not rock climbing. It was the only rock climbing wall I've ever been on in my life. And it's very small. I should go like take a picture of it. It's very small. It looks like something made for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really fun because you can like play with the resistance and it'll either go faster or slower. I had it on stopped because I, didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, if the internet detectives want to go find, Jessa posted the video of us goofing around on her Facebook page and like put music to it. I'm literally hanging on a boxing bag, whatever those are called, and like we're literally being ridiculous in the gym, like messing around, drinking wine, being idiots. So if that qualifies as rock climbing, then I 1000% take back what I said. And I'm an expert rock climber, and I shouldn't have said that, but I was meaning it as like the irony of my hometown watching me compete in this. They were probably like, damn, Holly, maybe you should have climbed.
Yeah. It sounds like the internet detectives should have been more thorough and found the video.
Anyway, when I saw that was a thing, I was like, oh my gosh, like, because I drank wine and got on that thing one time. Anyway.
Yes. So you get to the finale. Jackson wins part 3. He takes you.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to the after the votes are cast, the pre-jury is brought in, and that's when, and even during some of the questioning, there was some very pointed questions toward Jackson, and then they bring the pre-jury up and they start talking about some of the controversy of the season. You're sitting there in the final 2 chairs, probably like thinking, did I win this? Did I just lose this? What's going through your mind?
Well, yeah, I was like, okay, is this... Well, we also didn't know what was being referenced. And I was like, is there something going on that I don't know about? And like, maybe the votes are going to go in my direction, which I really didn't think that they probably would. So that whole night was just very overwhelming. And I really did not expect that. Especially now, like, knowing the allegations, and it's all a little weird. But so we were both very, very caught off guard. None of it really was game related though. And I knew that the jury was probably going to vote based on game. So I didn't think it would really have an outcome on the result. So, which it didn't.
Yes. So Jackson wins. Now, a lot of people say that coming in second place, losing the jury vote, is usually even tougher than like coming in third or fourth, because when you come in third and fourth, you you can be like, well, if I just made it there, just a little bit closer. But losing the jury vote is very much like a rejection of your peers, essentially. So how are you taking it?
No, it was hard for sure, and it still is hard because I had such a good relationship with every single person in the house, and I still do. Like, I talk on a regular basis to almost all of the house guests. I still love and respect all of them, and I was proud to have such a good relationship with everybody, because not everyone can say that. Most people can't say that. And so, but I know obviously there's a lot more that goes into the final vote than social game. And it is a hard pill to swallow, but at the same time, I lost next to one of the best players in BB history. So, and I'm thrilled for him, because not only is he a very strong player, he's also brilliant. And I knew that. I recognize that. And so it is hard. I mean, the whole aftermath has been hard. And especially because it was like, I feel so stupid afterwards. I said to a couple people, I was like, no, I get it. Like, I knew that I would be underestimated. I knew that you would underestimate my game, but like, just wait till you watch the season back. And now that I've watched the season and realized my DRs are nowhere to be seen, like, at all, I'm like, oh, okay, shit. All right. They're really never going to know what I was doing. But
Well, you did get mad at production at one point because they told you that you weren't funny.
They told me a lot of things.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to be myself, you know. I really wanted to be myself in the DR, and I wanted to be like lighthearted. I didn't want to be talking shit about people in the DR. I didn't want to be saying catty things all the time. I didn't, you know, it's like I wanted to be myself, and I wanted to like be goofy and or just I wanted to either be goofy or be talking game and very strategic. I didn't want to be in there being catty, and it, you know, it bummed me out that there were a lot, you know, I can't really say, but a lot of things bummed me out.
Mm-hmm.
And like the not funny thing was, I think, well, it was a couple times because I'd like try to say something lighthearted, whatever. It's like, or like Nick's goodbye message. It was gonna be so good because you know how Nick talks and like his ridiculous lingo.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to give him a goodbye message saying, yo, Nick, I came into this crib trying to get that bread, but like you stood in my way. So da 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 da, blah, blah, blah. All right, man, I'm just going to say less. I love you, cuz. So I had this whole thing, like, you know, playing up to Nick, and I was told I wasn't funny. And so I had to redo my goodbye message because I wasn't supposed to be the funny person. I wasn't supposed to be the real person who has insecurities, who has, you know, it's like I talked about some shit in there too of like why, like the reason why I didn't necessarily want to be part of Grateful and part of Six Shooters, because I had like been bullied so much and I've been through so much, and I felt like I was in a high school clique, and I didn't like that. And it's like I expressed that so much, but that's never seen because that's not the character, you know, that I was meant to be.
You did
it's
talk
like,
to Jackson about that on the feeds.
Yeah, it was frustrating, but it is what it is. It's reality TV, and that's what we signed up for. So I get it. We all are supposed to be a character, but that was one of the things that actually really made me like really negative throughout the whole season. I was like, I don't like this. I just want to be Holly.
Yeah. So what are you up to now?
Well, running around like a chicken with my head cut off. And then hopefully starting my own couple of things. I have a couple projects. I have projects that I was going to start before coming onto the show, one of which is a clothing line to help combat homelessness in our communities, because that is something that has had a big impact on my life and my family. So I want to start that. I also was talking about starting a nonprofit for suicide prevention with a friend before I came onto the show. I'm trying to figure out how I could do that, because that's also something very near and dear to my heart because of experiences and I've lost people to it. And so I would hopefully be able to ramp that up and get it off the ground. It is amazing that now we are given this platform, because beforehand I didn't really know how to launch these things, but now there is some sort of platform that we can leverage, and so I'm gonna try to do my best at utilizing that. And then also I do want to start something more with wine, because obviously I work in wine, so I'd love to start my own thing, maybe a wine podcast or YouTube or something, to kind of like teaching millennials about wine in a fun way. So that I actually started that before, like a year ago maybe, but never launched it. So hopefully soon. A lot of different things.
All right. So, where can people find you?
Anywho, people can find me on Instagram. I steer very clear of Twitter, although I do have one, but Twitter scares me. It is a very dark place, and it's very scary. But my handle is the same there as it is on Instagram. But Instagram, it's at Miss Holly Allen, MissHollyAllen. That's pretty much it.
All right.
That's the only social media I can handle because social media is rough. I mean, technically I have a Facebook too, but that's just to like keep in touch with my mom. Well, not keep in touch with my mom. I talk to her every day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for talking with me.
Oh man, I feel like I blabbed your ear off, but hopefully that was a good time, man. Walk down memory lane. Thank you, Taran.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
I hope people found this valuable. They got to hear your perspective on the season. Thank you so much. I know it's these tend to go pretty long, so I appreciate your time.
Gosh, I'm scared to check on how long we've been talking.
Yeah. All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Armstrong Taran, Instagram Taran_Armstrong, and I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. I will be talking to Jackson literally right after this, so it'll probably be uploaded very soon after this podcast. So check that out. And then, of course, we're gonna have a final roundtable to wrap up the season later in the week. I'll say on Twitter when exactly that's gonna happen, but tune in for that. Yeah, thanks for hanging out for all our Big Brother coverage, and I'll see you next time.